Chapter 393. The people in the room lowered their voices and continued to talk about something. The imperial physician brought by the former Wei had prescribed medicine, but their fifth prince refused to take it, even if it was for external use. Of course, this matter was quickly reported to the first prince. Because they had just settled down, the eldest prince rested for a while and leisurely watched the maidservant brew tea. When the maidservant handed him the teacup, he did not take it. Instead, he held her hand and leaned forward with a faint smile. It seemed like he was going to drink the tea from her hand. The maidservant blushed and her hands trembled. She did not dare to look him in the eyes. However, the eldest prince did not say anything and only looked at the maidservant quietly. Therefore, every time the maidservant stole a glance at him, she would be able to meet his eyes immediately. It made people think that he was always looking at her and that she was the only one in his eyes. He was a prince, a noble, and she was just a lowly servant. How could she withstand such an attack? Without much hesitation, she wanted to lean into his arms. At this moment, someone came in to report that the former Wei Kingdom's eldest prince naturally took the teacup and sat back down. "Come in." The maidservant was still in the same position and did not know what to do. The eldest prince smiled at her and said, "You can leave first." Only then did the maidservant come back to her senses. She replied weakly with reluctance, but when she didn't get a response, she turned around and left. She snorted coldly at the person who came in. Obviously, in her opinion, if this person hadn't suddenly appeared, she would have already been. The person who came in was puzzled and touched his nose. He did not know how he had provoked this beautiful maidservant, but he did not ask. "Greetings, Your Highness." "What's the matter?" The former Wei Kingdom's eldest prince took a sip of tea and looked at the teacup in his hand. It looked very ordinary, but it attracted all his attention. The person explained the matter concisely. The eldest prince finally gave the person who came in a look. "He is guarding against me. He thinks that I will kill him." The person lowered his head and did not say anything. If he wanted to live long, then he had to pretend that he did not hear some words even if he heard them. Since he is willing to continue to suffer, then let him be. When the imperial physician from Qi Yuan comes, just bring him over. There is no need to report back. "Yes, Your Highness." When only the former Grand Prince of Wei was left in the room, the smile on his face didn't change. He played with the cup in his hand and muttered, "The Crown Prince tried to frame me, but he is more likely to do it than me. He really is a brainless idiot." However, once this idiot made a ruckus regardless of anything, the destruction was immeasurable. "I just arrived and didn't even have time to catch my breath before something happened. I don't know what's going to happen next." "Guards." The attendant guarding outside came in. "Your Highness, what are your orders?" Yi Ning probably doesn't know about Fifth Royal Brother's injury. She has always been close to Fifth Royal Brother. Go and inform her so she can visit Fifth Royal Brother when she has time. "Yes, Your Highness." The former Wei Kingdom's Princess Yi Ning not only brought the most things, but also the most people. In the post house, the space that was originally allocated to the former Wei Kingdom was not enough. It still needed to be adjusted. It should be known that if the space next to the post house was moved, then there might not be enough space next to it. After all, the post house was the same as the imperial palace. There were advantages and disadvantages in terms of geographical location. The people from which countries were allocated to which places had been decided long ago and could not be easily changed. This change might cause trouble. Now that the former Wei Kingdom occupied the space next to the post house, there might not be enough space next to it. If the post house was moved one by one, then it would only be the former Wei Kingdom. At most, the Qi Yuan's people would have to work harder. But what if several countries moved in together? Once they moved in, who would allow them to move again? Although it seemed like a small matter, they could definitely accuse them of not taking them seriously. Then it would escalate to a diplomatic issue between countries. Therefore, the space next to the post house could not be moved easily. It was also very troublesome to move it. The best way was to move Princess Yi Ning to another place. After all, in the past, the former Wei Kingdom's envoys who went to Qi Yuan lived in this place. There had never been a situation where there was not enough space. Moreover, it was more than enough. Logically speaking, even if there was a princess following them, there would be no problem with more things and more people. However, Princess Ening was a little too much. Since it was a special situation, it was understandable to move Princess Ening. The problem now was that Princess Ening did not want to move. Her excuse was quite dignified. She was like a girl. Since she went out with her brothers, she naturally had to live in the same courtyard as them. There was no reason for her to live elsewhere. Moreover, the people who served Princess Ening said that their princess was a little timid. She was unfamiliar with the place and people and would be afraid to leave her brothers. Of course, they didn't say it so bluntly, but this was what they meant. The official from the Ministry of Rights who stayed behind tried to persuade her, but it was useless. He just wanted to scratch his head. Moreover, because he was a man, he couldn't see Princess Ening in person. His subordinates insisted that it was their princess's idea. Not only that, they also repeatedly urged the officials from Qi Yuan to make the arrangements quickly. Their prince and princess were generous and didn't care about the fact that Qi Yuan didn't arrange the accommodation in advance. However, they couldn't deal with it for a long time. Their master was not a good-tempered person. The official from Qi Yuan almost cursed directly. It was obvious that they were looking for trouble. However, he couldn't deal with it. He couldn't argue with a group of women, so he had to go back. Don't look at the matter of Li Hongming seeing Princess Ening, and seemingly feeling the immortal qi on her body. In fact, she was also very unhappy in her heart. The originally planned itinerary was rushed at the back so quickly, her whole body was about to fall apart, unusually uncomfortable. It would be strange if she was happy. However, she had no choice at all. Eldest brother seemed to have a good temper, but in fact, he was very hypocritical. He was a smiling fox. When fifth brother was patient, he could coax her. When he was impatient, he was quite scary. Even if the Empress's mother and the Crown Prince's brother were here, she didn't dare to be too rash. It was not easy to get here, but the accommodation was not arranged well. How could he not be angry? Not to mention discussing, he didn't directly make a scene, which was already to protect the image of the former Wei. The former Wei Crown Prince's people sent people here at this time. Princess Ening didn't show it on her face, but in her heart, she scolded, "Serves you right." Then she said a few words, saying that she was still busy here, and that she would go and see fifth brother after she settled down. Speaking of which, Princess Ening had a lot of opinions towards her two elder brothers. In fact, she also knew that the post house that Qi Yuan specially gave to Great Wei was already big enough. She had once gone in to take a look at her own country's post house, and it couldn't compare to this place. For all the people from Great Wei who came, if it was a little more crowded, it could be arranged. Thinking about how noble she was, she could endure a little more crowded. However, that good elder brother of hers, according to the normal accommodation arrangement, the entire place was basically divided into 5 equal parts. The 3 of them siblings each occupied one place, and the remaining officials occupied 2 places. Was this a problem? It was not a problem. According to the master's identity, it was reasonable to divide the area. The problem was that in the entire envoy group, she occupied a little more than half of the people. Needless to say, there were more than half of the people, and 2/3 of the things, but the result was only 1/5 of the territory. How should she arrange it? How should she arrange it? It was not her who wanted to come to Qi Yuan, and it was not her who wanted to bring so many people and so many things. Now, it was thrown to her to deal with. The trouble was still in Qi Yuan, so, in essence, it was the former Great Wei who was looking for trouble. When Lu Qingdi learned of this matter, he naturally did not have a good expression. Luo Peishan consciously stood up. He went to deal with it. Originally, it was the Ministry of Rights' job to receive the envoys from various countries. During this time, Li Hongming went to Jin Qin Wang Fu. Because they had reconciled, Li Hongyuan naturally did not block him at the door. But even so, it did not mean that Li Hongyuan would like to see him. Knowing the purpose of his visit to Jin Qin Wang Fu, he directly asked someone to take him to see He Zhihai. Li Hongming's expression changed slightly, but he did not say anything. Li Hongyuan did not want to see him, but he did not want to see Li Hongyuan. But in the end, these were two different things. The other party did not want to see him, which meant that Li Hongyuan did not want to give him face. But, this kind of thing, there was really no way to haggle over it. When he saw He Zhihai was surrounded and beaten by the people of Jin Qin Wang Fu. The ordinary bodyguards of Jin Qin Wang Fu were well trained, and Li Hongyuan ordered He Zhihai not to fight back. If he hurt the bodyguards of Jin Qin Wang Fu, he was not to visit again in the future. This was a real threat to He Zhihai, so, at this time, he was miserably surrounded and beaten. Li Hongming was surprised. What is going on? An Yi stood at the side, expressionless, replying to Wang Ye. Our master said, since He Gongzi fought with someone, the other party can still stand properly. It can be seen that He Gongzi's fists are like cotton and must be well trained. If you want to beat someone, you have to be beaten first. Li Hongming couldn't help but twitch his mouth. To be able to speak crooked logic and absolutely carry it out, other than Li Hongyuan, there was no one else. Thinking of the miserable appearance of the former Wei's fifth prince, how could he stand properly? Did it have to be unable to get up, unable to move, to be called not good? But he couldn't care less. Since He Gongzi is training, Ben Wang will not disturb him. If he could take the person away, he probably wouldn't have to come in. Several servants of the He family were also present at the time. They should be clear about the previous matter. Ben Wang will go ask them. Those people's injuries are not light and are currently healing. So, I am afraid that Wang Ye will have to move. No matter, lead the way. Since he had said so, could Li Hongming still put on airs and say no? Even if he was unhappy in his heart. Actually, this matter was quite simple. The cause, the result, everything added up in a few sentences. There was no conspiracy, no ups and downs. Li Hongming had also heard of the former Wei's version of events. Comparing the two, Li Hongming didn't know what kind of expression he should show. In his opinion, He Gongzi was just looking for trouble. He was just a commoner, so what if he really humiliated him? However, since it had escalated to diplomatic relations between the two countries, then there was no doubt that he had to stand firm on his position of Qi Yuan people cannot be humiliated so easily. Thus, his expression was unusually serious. Ben Wang will report this matter to Imperial Father and let the former Wei's people know that Qi Yuan people cannot be humiliated. Alright, in short, from a commoner's face, it had risen to the entire Qi Yuan's face. Therefore, people like Li Hongming were really enough. No matter how fake these words were, as a person of Qi Yuan, he also had to stand firm on his position. As long as Qi Yuan was there, he would not waver. Li Hongming left Jin Qin Wang Fu. In his heart, his dislike of He Zhihai rose to a new height. Stirring up trouble and looking for trouble, he was already busy enough. Li Hongming entered the palace. Luo Peishan had already left the palace. Luo Peishan also didn't bother with Princess Yi Ning. He was a man and an official. The other party was a woman and a princess of another country. This was etiquette. No matter what, he couldn't make any mistakes. He naturally went to look for the person in charge of the former Wei. When the former Wei's eldest prince found out that a minister of Qi Yuan had come, he naturally couldn't neglect him and quickly invited him in. Luo Peishan was full of elegance and even had a bit of immortal aura. He treated the former Wei's eldest prince with the respect that should be shown to a prince of another country. He also seemed to show some concern for the younger generation. Under normal circumstances, for a person in a higher position, if a person of lower status than them assumed the attitude of an elder, no matter if the other party was taking advantage of their seniority or purely showing concern, it would make people feel disgusted. They only had one thought: what kind of thing are you that you dare to assume such an attitude? However, Luo Peishan didn't make people feel disgusted at all. Instead, it was like a spring breeze. When the former Wei's eldest prince realized this, he had already chatted happily with Luo Peishan for a while. Naturally, he became vigilant. In fact, it didn't have any effect. Luo Peishan didn't pry into anything and just chatted for a while. After the foreshadowing was done, it was time to get to the main topic. Great Wei and Qi Yuan have the same inheritance. Great Wei has always considered itself as the most orthodox inheritance. In this regard, Qi Yuan is somewhat lacking. Hearing Luo Peishan's words, the former Wei's eldest prince was naturally a bit proud. He even said a few words humbly. For example, a lot of things were taken away at that time, especially various books. Qi Yuan also appeared after that. It was understandable that some things were broken. Although that was what he said, it was a joke if he really cared about it. Back then, the Wei's emperor and his officials left the capital in a hurry. The things they took away were definitely limited. It was understandable that they took more practical things like gold and silver. Moreover, even if they took away a lot of books, a country was so big. The books in the capital were nothing. It would be a joke if some inheritance was broken because of this. Luo Peishan smiled and didn't get angry. He even praised a few people. Then, naturally, the topic turned to the precautions between men and women. After hundreds of years of change, Qi Yuan's requirements for women were not as strict as before. It couldn't be compared to Great Wei. Even Princess Yi Ning's accompanying this trip was probably an exception. Her clothes were also influenced by her family. All these things must be because Princess Yi Ning was extremely favored. Even the Emperor and Empress of Great Wei couldn't bear to be harsh on her. Everyone knew and understood the pitiful hearts of parents in the world. As long as there were no problems in major matters, they would act. It was just a small matter to pamper one person. The former Wei's eldest prince's expression became a bit stiff. So, everything was waiting for him here. He should have known earlier. How could he be so complacent? On the surface, he said that Great Wei was good in every way. In fact, he was just mocking them for saying one thing and doing another. They casually took their princess out of the country. Who knew what the hell was going on about the precautions between men and women? The emperor and empress could spoil a princess without any principles. Could they also do stupid things without any principles? The former Wei's eldest prince thought quickly and was about to open his mouth to refute, but Luo Peishan was not done yet. The former Wei was a country of etiquette and paid the most attention to ancient etiquette. This time, they did not inform Qi Yuan that Princess Yi Ning would accompany them. They did not tell them how many people they would bring. It was probably because they were too busy and forgot. However, it did not matter. Occasionally, some things were not taken care of. Everyone understood. It was also their fault for not preparing a place for Princess Yi Ning. So, to express our apology, Qi Yuan is willing to arrange another place for Princess Yi Ning. It is also within the range of the courier station, but it is on the side close to the imperial palace. Perhaps it is a little remote for the whole courier station, but the scenery inside is more pleasant. Moreover, it is close to the imperial palace, so there is no need to worry about her safety. It is also more convenient for her to go in and out. It is not a big deal now, but in a few days, the envoys from other countries will arrive. Living next to the Great Wei, there has never been a female family member. Great Wei pays attention to this, so it should be better for the princess to avoid them. After all, the princess cannot not go out. As for the other envoys, they are all here for the emperor's birthday and for the sake of the friendship between the two countries. Luo Peishan spoke at a leisurely pace, openly praising and belittling the prince. However, he had already taken responsibility for the prince's mistake, and was even more concerned about the princess's reputation. If the prince did not follow his lead, it would mean that he doubted the prince's dogma and was slapping himself in the face. The former Wei crown prince had nothing to say. So, he had wanted to cause trouble at the beginning, but in the end, he had dug himself into a pit? Your Excellency is right. It was indeed this prince's fault for not thinking things through. Now that I have to trouble Your Excellency, please forgive me. At this point, it was better to simply admit it. After all, if the prince insisted on not agreeing, it would not be the Qi Yuan who would lose face, but the Great Wei. As the person in charge, he would be the first to be punished when he returned. Everyone makes mistakes. Moreover, the first prince has little experience, so it is understandable for him to have made some small mistakes. The former Wei crown prince could not maintain the expression on his face. The entire Great Way had been openly praised and belittled, and now he was being insulted as well? But did Luo Peishan say anything? No, he was just following the former Wei Crown Prince's words. Therefore, the former Wei Crown Prince could only swallow his anger and swallow his anger. This old man is a foreign subject, so it is inconvenient for me to meet Princess Yining. Please convey our apologies to the first prince. Your Excellency is too polite. This was originally our fault. Luo Peishan was not modest at all. He nodded, as if acknowledging the former Wei Crown Prince's words. The former Wei Crown Prince almost choked on his breath. He had to admit that he had seen it for himself. Although there were such people in the Great Way, it seemed that his country's people were a little weaker. The matter was done. Luo Peishan was busy today and had other important matters to attend to, so he took his leave first. The former Wei Crown Prince could only see him out personally. Outside, Luo Peishan instructed the officials from the Ministry of Rites to do their best and not be negligent. The official from the Ministry of Rites, who had been troubled by Princess Yining before, now had a feeling of reverence for Luo Peishan. It was like the endless flow of water. Princess Yining had also made up her mind to waste time, but she did not want to wait for her eldest imperial brother. The former Wei Crown Prince only explained the matter in a soft voice. Princess Yining wanted to fly into a rage on the spot, but it was clear that the former Wei Crown Prince understood his sister quite well, so he was not angry, and his smile did not change. Yining, did you forget the purpose of coming to Qi Yuan this time? Princess Yining's face was ashen, and her beautiful eyes seemed to be about to spit fire. The former Wei Crown Prince suddenly reached out and touched her eyes. Princess Yining subconsciously dodged, and slapped the back of the Crown Prince's hand. The Crown Prince did not care, and even twirled his fingers as if he was reminiscing, Yining's eyes are really beautiful. Even if you are angry, you are so moving. No wonder His Highness the Crown Prince likes you so much. What nonsense are you talking about? Princess Yining was unable to restrain her anger, and there was some panic in her expression. Nonsense? Look at what Yining is saying. Did I say something wrong? Not only His Highness the Crown Prince likes you, but many people like you, including Father Emperor, other brothers, and me. So many people like you. Shouldn't Yining be happy? Princess Yining's expression was very ugly, but she did not say a word. The former Wei Crown Prince smiled again. Yining, let the subordinates prepare. You have a lot of things, and if you delay any longer, who knows when you will be busy. It doesn't matter when you are in Great Way, but it is better to be careful outside. After all, we represent Great Way. If people think that we Great Way people are undisciplined, it will not be good. In fact, it doesn't matter if I lose face, but if Great Way loses face, you will be the sinner. Who did this to you? Princess Yining could not bear it and screamed. Who did this to you? Who did this to you? Didn't you want to bring the things and people? Even if you didn't, did you refuse? Without you, we can relax easily. You should be very clear how much trouble you have caused along the way. Ah, that's not right. How would Yining know? You're the apple of Imperial Father, Empress, and Crown Prince's eyes. You can have whatever you want. It's just a matter of saying a word. How can it be troublesome to just say a word? You've never done anything. Naturally, you can't experience the troubles of others. Since you brought it out, you naturally have to be responsible. You want others to give it to you? The Crown Prince leaned closer and lowered his voice. Who do you think you are? What right do you have? Yining, I am not the Crown Prince. However, it is not without effect for you to cause a ruckus. Yining, if you don't want to suffer, be obedient. Otherwise, you may not even see Father Emperor and the Empress for the last time. Princess Yining was so angry that her whole body was trembling. The hatred in her eyes was almost tangible. The former Wei Crown Prince sighed softly. The more I look at you, the prettier you are. Yining, don't look at me like that. Otherwise, I might do something. Princess Yining's expression instantly became fearful. She subconsciously crossed her arms in front of her chest, her face full of vigilance. The former Wei Crown Prince smiled again, I just want to dig it out and keep it. Ning, aren't you thinking too much? After all, I just like Ning's eyes. After saying that, he seemed to have lost his interest and patience. He turned around and left without hesitation. Princess Ning was startled. Then, she covered her face with both hands and squatted on the floor in the room, breaking down and crying. The servant girls outside heard it, but none of them had the intention to go in and take a look. They lowered their heads and pretended not to hear anything. As for the others, after receiving the Crown Prince's orders, they did not dare to delay. Fortunately, many things were not opened yet, so it was not troublesome to put them away. The things were moved out one by one. Qi Yuan also sent many people to help, so the moving was very fast. In the end, Princess Ning was escorted out by the servant girls. She covered her face with a veil. Her eyes were not red or swollen. They were still lively as if they could speak. There was nothing strange about them. The Crown Prince followed beside her. The atmosphere between the brother and sister was harmonious. It seemed that the relationship between the brother and sister was very good. However, Princess Ning was not ostentatious on the way. She also rode in a very normal carriage. In fact, the place arranged for Princess Ning was just as Luo Peishan said. The location was only a little remote compared to the rest of the post house. In fact, the location was very good. The scenery inside was also very beautiful. It could be said that it was much better than the previous place. Princess Ning was not happy at first. Now that she saw the place, her mood improved a lot. She even sneered in her heart. This place might really be safer. While she was still tidying up here, there was news that another country had arrived. It was much smaller than the former Wei and Qi Yuan. The country was called Chong. Even if there was a prince, they only arranged for people below to welcome him. Not to mention the prince, even the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights did not get to see him. Even so, they did not dare to have any objections. It was just that there was a difference in language. People from the Honglu Temple had to follow them all the way. Speaking of which, in this country, the people from the Honglu Temple were only sent to the former Wei for decoration. The others, no matter how big or small, needed people from the Honglu Temple. People from the Chong Kingdom heard that the former Wei had arrived. It had to be said that they were quite surprised. Under normal circumstances, it was normal for a big country like this to arrive a few days before the emperor's birthday. If a big country was going to a small country, it was not impossible for them to arrive on the same day. For a country like the former Wei, it was very strange for them to be the first to arrive. In all likelihood, there were things that they did not know. However, these small countries could not interfere with the affairs of these big countries. They had to be obedient and do what they should do. Of course, they had to inquire about things that they should inquire about. They had to make it clear and understand, so as to avoid conflict. The people they inquired about were the people from the Qi Yuan's Honglu Temple. They would definitely tell them what they could know. After all, if they really did conflict, the people from the Qi Yuan's Honglu Temple would also take responsibility. And if these small countries did not want to know, the people from the Qi Yuan's Honglu Temple would certainly not tell them. This was the best and safest way. The next day, Lu Chengdi held a banquet in the palace to welcome the former Wei's envoy. He also made friends with the people from the Chong Kingdom. No matter how small a country was, it was still a country. He still had to give them some face. Although under normal circumstances, if the Chong Kingdom was the first to arrive, at most they would send a prince to hold a banquet outside the palace. This prince would most likely not be a prince with real power like Prince Kong, Prince Rui, or Prince Gong. But because there was a princess in the Chong Kingdom, this banquet would definitely be different. Not to mention other things, at least there must be women present. Therefore, Lu Chengdi simply waved his hand and added a few outsiders to the family banquet. Since it was a family banquet, then, the concubines who held real power and the princes who had already been conferred the title of prince could not be left out. As for the officials, they had to be excluded. This arrangement seemed to be giving the former Wei Tian a lot of face. However, since it was a family banquet, it meant that they treated you as one of their family. How could one treat a family member the same as a guest? Obviously, it was absolutely impossible. The former was much more casual than the latter. Casual also meant that some things could not be fussed over. The three members of the former Wei's imperial family brought along their entourage of officials. The rest of the people were naturally very few. They first paid their respects to Lu Chengdi according to the rules. As for the Chong kingdom, only 10 people entered the palace, and only 3 of them were qualified to stand in front of Lu Chengdi. Compared to the people from the former Wei, they were really a bit pitiful. However, the 3 people from the Chong kingdom didn't have the slightest strange emotion. Although they were just hitching a ride at this banquet, for them, it could be considered as flattering. After the formal greeting, they naturally prepared a string instrument as well. Lu Chengdi personally brought them over. These envoys saw that many people were already present and knew their identity from their clothes. Moreover, there were basically women beside them. The officials wouldn't bring women to the reception banquet of other countries' envoys. They were puzzled and looked at each other in confusion. In the end, they didn't ask and didn't mention it. However, seeing that there were women present, Princess Yi Ning's heart calmed down a lot. She was originally worried about what would happen in the end. If it was better, they might arrange for someone else to receive her, or the concubines, or other princesses. She didn't want to face a bad situation. It was probably that she, a woman, was mixed in with a group of men. At that time, she would be as conspicuous as possible. Even if she was used to being surrounded by stars, it was only in a group of people who were lower in status than her or in the palace. The emperor of a country that was on the same level as the former Wei, a group of princes, Wangye, and officials who held great power would no longer flatter and fawn on her. Instead, they would size her up and even have deep malice. Just thinking about that atmosphere made her afraid. Fortunately, she suddenly felt a trace of gratitude to Lu Chengdi who made such an arrangement. After greeting each other, they all sat down. The others basically sat in pairs. Only Princess Yi Ning sat alone. To be honest, the former Wei had praised Princess Yi Ning very highly in the beginning. Now, Qi Yuan's behavior was simply not inferior. Other than being considerate, it seemed that they did everything for Princess Yi Ning. However, this kind of thing, no one dared to ask about it. On the other hand, the first prince of Qi Yuan wanted to say something a few times. Perhaps he wanted to say something serious, but he was blocked by Lu Chengdi every time. Lu Chengdi smiled kindly and seemed to be genuinely happy. He said bluntly that now, he just wanted to eat, drink, enjoy the dance and listen to music. He didn't want to talk about anything else. In this way, the first prince of Wei couldn't do anything. After all, Lu Chengdi was the emperor. He was at the same level as his father. If he didn't say anything, he couldn't even say anything. As a guest, it was definitely not a wise move to make the emperor unhappy. As for the 5th Prince of Wei, his injuries were definitely not light. In fact, it was not suitable for him to attend. With the medical records of Qi Yuan's imperial doctors, Lu Chengdi wouldn't have any objections even if he didn't attend. However, he insisted on attending and even pretended that nothing had happened. If it weren't for the bruises on his face, one wouldn't be able to tell that he had been severely beaten up yesterday. However, He Zhihai didn't specifically hit his face. Otherwise, even if he wanted to come out today, he definitely wouldn't be able to do it. The first Prince of Wei was originally prepared for his 5th brother to rest at the post house. However, when he went out, the other party was already waiting for him. The other party said a few words of concern and said that he didn't need to force himself to go. The Emperor of Qi Yuan was not an unreasonable person. However, his 5th brother not only didn't appreciate the kindness, but also mocked and ridiculed him. The first Prince of Wei was almost angered to death. It should be known that once this person showed up, some things were hard to say. He didn't know why the other party went crazy, but he couldn't do anything to him. What was the 5th Prince of Wei crazy about? He didn't care before, but now he was a person who was going to do great things. He had to be exposed to more things and see more things. Moreover, he naturally couldn't let his good brother monopolize the limelight. Therefore, his performance was actually a bit more active than the former Grand Prince of Wei. If he wasn't toasting a cup of wine with Lu Chengdi, then he was pulling Prince Chiyuan, who was opposite to him, to chat for a bit. It seemed that he had a sense of propriety and was just right. After seeing how arrogant he was yesterday and seeing how he was now, to be honest, some people really wondered if the fifth prince had a twin brother who looked exactly the same. The fifth prince had changed his unruly clothes, and his temperament was much more restrained. He was a little forthright, but he controlled it so that people wouldn't dislike him. On the contrary, people might even like his true nature. Even Lu Chengdi's expression was a little strange. He originally wanted to completely blame yesterday's incident on the fifth prince, but now it seemed that he couldn't bear to do so. Moreover, Lu Chengdi said a few words of concern in advance about the matter that he didn't want to mention. The first prince of Wei's heart was in his mouth. Just as he was about to speak up for his stupid brother, the other party beat him to it. "Thank you, Your Majesty of Qi Yuan, for your concern. I'm fine. Speaking of which, yesterday's incident was also a misunderstanding. I've always respected brave warriors. Yesterday, I was itching to fight, so I made a move. Later, I found out that he was the son of General He. I've been friends with this person for a long time, but I didn't expect to meet him under such circumstances." The first prince of Wei's face immediately darkened. He wanted to get up and slap this brainless thing to death. On the other hand, the people of Qi Yuan all had strange expressions on their faces, especially Li Hongming, who had seen the fifth prince of Wei's miserable state yesterday. At that time, he was still talking tough. How did he change his attitude in just one night? Moreover, based on the relationship between the first prince of Wei and Qi Yuan, it was strange for him to say such words. However, this was a good thing for Qi Yuan. After all, the fifth prince was seriously injured in their territory. No matter how they quibbled, they couldn't change this fact. There was no benefit in biting the fifth prince of Wei. Since the victim didn't say anything, they could only be a little more magnanimous. So that's how it is. Speaking of He Zhihai, this boy has never returned to the capital before. This time, he just happened to come back. Maybe it's your fate. When the fifth prince is in Qiyuan, you might as well exchange some pointers with him. After all, it's a rare opportunity. Lu Chengdi laughed. Learn from him. The fifth prince of Wei's chest and abdomen couldn't stop throbbing. If this happened 2 more times, he might lose his life. His face was a little stiff. He braced himself and said, "If there's a chance." He wouldn't let this happen again. The first prince of Wei's face darkened. He didn't say anything else. Everything was messed up by this idiot. In fact, the first prince of Wei couldn't figure out what this idiot was trying to do. It was fine if he didn't know the severity of his actions when he was in Dawei, but he still acted like this in such an occasion? If he really didn't know anything, putting aside the true relationship between Dawei and Qi Yuan, his performance was impeccable. Even the first prince of Wei would be amazed. Therefore, it was definitely not that he didn't know anything. However, the first prince of Wei really couldn't figure out what he was trying to do. What was the fifth prince of Wei trying to do? The first prince would never have thought that he had such a huge ambition that he shouldn't have. He wanted a position that he had never thought of before. Therefore, a matter that could cause a lot of problems came to an end. It was really unexpected. Quite some time had passed, but a certain seat in Qi Yuan was still empty. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654180. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 394. Where is Lao Lu? Why hasn't he appeared yet? Lu Chengdi couldn't help but frown. There were so many seats and only one was empty. How could it not be conspicuous? However, as a guest, it was not good to ask. And on Qi Yuan's side, they all knew who set up the seats. For them, his special treatment had become a habit. Those who had the power to control didn't say anything, they naturally pretended to be deaf and mute, acting as if they didn't see anything. Speaking of which, the Empress was still ill. Although she was much better than before, her physical strength was still lacking. Attending such an occasion was a burden, and it was possible that her illness would worsen when she returned. Thus, she simply didn't appear at the welcoming banquet. If they wanted to see her, they would have to wait until the day of the emperor's birthday. Lu Chengdi only had Su Guifei and Qin Shufei by his side, and those below the rank of concubine could only appear on the day of the emperor's birthday. Of course, their natures were completely different from the empress. They wanted to appear but didn't have the qualifications, while the empress was healthy and didn't have a problem if she didn't want to appear. Other than Lu Chengdi, the only one who could control Li Hongyuan was Su Guifei. However, she always had an appropriate smile on her face. When she heard Lu Chengdi's words, she sighed and said, "Emperor, it's not like you don't know Yuaner's temper. He is becoming more and more disobedient. Didn't he send someone to say that he would be late? Who knows when he will be late?" Chen Xie says that Jin Qin Wang has restrained himself a lot since his marriage. Gue Fei Jiejie shouldn't be too harsh on him. Qin Shu Fei smiled. Thinking about it carefully, beloved concubine is right. It seems that this man still needs to marry before he can settle down. Lu Chengdi said, feeling a little gratified. If it was a few years earlier, Zheng could have saved a few years of headaches. Li Hongyuan was still abusing his power, but as long as he restrained himself a little, Lu Chengdi could be comforted. If his other sons did something wrong, they would be scolded by him. This was the difference between them. After so many years, we just had to meet at this time. It can be seen that it is fate. Didn't great Master Liaochen say that it is a match made in heaven? That's right. Lu Chengdi nodded. Thinking about it, the Luo family was forced to ask for this marriage. Although he also felt sorry for his son's considerate people, these good girls had one accident after another. Even if he was the emperor, he had to hold back his guilty conscience. He was already mentally prepared for the worst. Who would have thought that this kind of marriage turned out to be very good? His son had calmed down, and his daughter-in-law was fine without illness or disaster. When imperial concubine Su heard this, her expression didn't change, but her heart wasn't the same. Before they got married, she thought that this girl was a good person, but in the end, it was all just an act. She had a bad temper and didn't take her mother-in-law, seriously. She even seduced her son all day long. In any case, the more they got together, the more she disliked her. However, there was nothing she could do. There was already a rift between her son and her. The emperor didn't take what she did seriously, and her son was protecting her. What could she do? In the entire harem, there was probably no mother-in-law more aggrieved than her. Imperial concubine Su didn't think about it. She said that she was the best and kindest mother-in-law, but in fact, she used this kind of method to suppress Princess Rue until she couldn't breathe. If there was anything wrong, it would be her daughter-in-law's fault. Princess Rue might look relaxed on the surface, but in fact, she was more aggrieved and depressed than the other sisters-in-law. She had no one to complain to. There were some things that even if she said, her own mother might not believe her. In the end, Imperial concubine Su was a person with a strong desire for control. She used this seemingly gentle but actually extremely harsh method to make Princess Rue be respectful to her and not dare to say a word. Prince Rue was also bound by reputation and other aspects and couldn't resist. In contrast, Jingwan was a completely different type. She didn't care about Imperial concubine Su's methods of hiding needles in cotton floss. Moreover, she had Li Hongyuan's support and was full of confidence. Speaking of which, the other princesses didn't seem to be as comfortable as Princess Rue. However, even the former Princess Kong didn't have it as bad as Imperial concubine Su under the Empress. Little sister Xu Fei is right. That's fate. The only regret now is that Yuan doesn't have a child yet. I don't know when old Sixth's wife's stomach will have any movement. His words touched the bottom of Lu Chengdi's heart, intentionally or unintentionally. Qin Shufei glanced at Imperial Concubine Su. The people who knew Imperial Concubine Su the best were definitely the old people who had been serving Lu Chengdi for a few years. Children are also about fate. When it's time, there will naturally be a child. Little sister Imperial Concubine will be able to hold this grandson sooner or later. Imperial Concubine Su's eyes flashed. She had 2 sons, but there was no sign of a grandson. This thorn. Moreover, Yuan Er's son. The 3 people above were talking. Their voices weren't loud, but the people below all tacitly kept quiet. In addition, they were closer to the throne. Even if there was music, they were relatively far away. Therefore, they could basically hear it clearly. Although everyone's focus might be different, they all listened attentively. Imperial Concubine Su was about to speak again when outside, Jin Qinhuang and Jin Qinhuang Fei have arrived. To be honest, as the emperor, sitting at the banquet, his son actually arrived late. The old man heard the chamberlain call for his son. No matter if it was the former Wei or the Chong Empire, it was unheard of. However, looking at the expressions of the other people in Qiyuan Empire, they seemed to be accustomed to it. Even the Qiyuan emperor would not be angry. How strange was this? The women who were originally dancing quickly retreated when they heard the sound. The music also stopped temporarily. Soon, 2 figures appeared at the door. Without mentioning anything else, those who hadn't seen Li Hongyuan were shocked by his face. Of course, those who couldn't recover for a long time were in the minority. More people felt that the gap between Jin Qinhuang and the rumor was too big. If they weren't sure of his title, and if they weren't sure that there couldn't be 2 people with the same title in the same country, they really couldn't connect the rumor with the one in front of them. According to the rumor, Jin Qinhuang was malicious, ruthless, and temperamental. Although it didn't mention his appearance, they knew that a person with this kind of temperament, no matter how good his appearance was, would certainly be gloomy and vicious. Then, no matter how good his appearance was, it would be destroyed for no reason. However, Jin Qinhuang only looked a little cold and cheerless, but his aura was peaceful. He was like a jade tree and orchid, handsome and elegant. That incomparably handsome face became more and more prominent, making people almost unable to move their eyes away. However, no matter how outstanding he was, the person standing next to him was still not overshadowed by his brilliance. Although she wasn't a stunning beauty, she was also a very good beauty. Qinhuang Fei was dressed in a grand dress, bright and generous. It felt like she was a completely different person from Jin Qinhuang. However, when the 2 people stood together, it made people feel that they were exceptionally harmonious, as if there was no room for a third person to step in. Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan greeted the 3 people above. Lu Chengdi didn't say anything and just waved his hand to let them sit down. There seemed to be a bit of perfunctory disdain on his face, but people with discerning eyes could feel that he was happy. This recognition made some people raise their eyebrows again. Originally, they had heard that Qi Yuan's Lu Chengdi was exceptionally doting on his 6th son. At first, they snorted disapprovingly. There was no father and son in the imperial family, there was no familial affection in the imperial family. Even if it was the so-called doting, it also had a limit. However, now that they saw it with their own eyes, this doting was more than what they had expected. Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan sat down and waved away the palace maid who came forward to pour wine. He poured a cup for himself and was about to pour a little for Jing Wan when he paused halfway. Warm a pot of green plum wine. Green plum wine had a bit of sweetness and sourness. The alcohol content was also very low. It was very suitable for women who weren't good at drinking. It was obvious who it was prepared for. Jing Wan wasn't accustomed to this kind of thing, but that was at home. Right now, they were in the palace, and there were also envoys from other countries. Oh! Jing Wan gently smiled and calmly accepted. Jing Wan and Li Hongyuan weren't affected. However, those who were there before clearly felt that the atmosphere was a bit gloomy. It was the former Wei's 5th prince who suddenly laughed heartily. Jin Qinhuang came a step late. Shouldn't you punish yourself with a cup? Under normal circumstances, there was nothing wrong with these words. However, when it came to Jin Qinhuang, it was a big problem. Originally, he didn't have any interest in paying attention to these people. His attention was only on Jingwan. Hearing that, he lightly looked over. Who? With one word, the former Wei's fifth prince almost couldn't hold it in. The sickly fifth Wangya at the side coughed lightly. Sixth brother, this is De Wei's fifth prince. Li Hongyuan drank a mouthful of wine. Who was beaten up by He Zhihai yesterday? This matter had already been covered up. Now that Li Hongyuan mentioned it, the atmosphere was suddenly a bit awkward. Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't feel it. He Zhihai really is a waste. Yesterday, he still boasted shamelessly to Ben Wang that he beat people until they couldn't get up. Does this former Wei's fifth prince look like he couldn't get up? They all said that one shouldn't expose a person's shortcomings. Li Hongyuan was someone who would poke where it hurts. Moreover, the title of former Wei generally wouldn't be said in front of former Wei people. Li Hongyuan didn't have the slightest taboo. Everything depended on himself. What was called condescending, what was called having no dust in your eyes, what was called looking down on everything, Jin Qin Wang will give you a perfect interpretation. What did little gangster he count as in the northeast border city? What did the former Wei's fifth prince count as in the former Wei's capital city? In front of this lord, they were all dregs. This living king of hell was arrogant in a low-key way, arrogant in a gorgeous way. How could ordinary people catch up to his rank? Lao Lu, yesterday's matter was all a misunderstanding. Lu Chengdi tried to smooth things over. His heart was actually a bit happy and also a bit pitiful for the former Wei people. However, this son, when he provoked him, he didn't even give him face. Former Wei people, it was really embarrassing. They could only admit that they were unlucky. Who told you to go up and flirt with him for no reason? Misunderstanding. Li Hongyuan sneered. That ridicule couldn't be more obvious. Lu Chengdi's old face was a bit embarrassed. The veins on his forehead were throbbing. Letting this evil creature participate in the welcoming banquet, perhaps it was a mistake in itself. Why couldn't he remember the lesson? Jingwan suddenly reached out and took the cup in Li Hongyuan's hand. She filled it up and smiled. Fu Huang said it was a misunderstanding, then it was a misunderstanding. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/66544183. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicon.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website. Bicon.com. Chapter 395. Li Hongyuan glanced at her, took the cup, and looked away. His meaning couldn't be more obvious. Lu Chengdi felt inexplicably stifled. His father was speaking, yet he still dared to mock him. Although he wasn't mocking him in essence, he didn't say anything because of his wife's words. Lu Chengdi didn't know what Imperial Consort Su was thinking. Otherwise, he would have more or less felt the same way. However, he didn't say anything in the end. If he scolded him a few more times, he might not be able to stop. Regardless of what other people were thinking, the former fifth Prince of Wei was definitely furious. If it weren't for a certain lord who behind him hinting to stop him, he might have gone berserk on the spot. However, going berserk in front of the King of Hell was probably not comparable to being beaten up by He Zhihai yesterday. Even if the situation was less serious, he might not even be able to get out of bed before leaving Qi Yuan. However, although he didn't act out, his gaze was as if he wanted to eat someone. However, the hatred Li Hongyuan attracted in the past was gone. This gaze was completely indifferent to him because he didn't have the qualifications to be vigilant. Therefore, the former fifth Prince of Wei glared cross-eyed for a long time. It made him more and more angry, and it made his eyes uncomfortable. There was no effect at all. To the people of Qi Yuan, it was definitely a delightful thing to make someone from an enemy country unhappy. This was especially so for those who had been in deep trouble because of Li Hongyuan. When they saw others being humiliated by the King of Hell, they couldn't help but gloat. They strangely found a sense of balance and joy. It wasn't strange for the people of Qi Yuan to have such a mentality. However, the former eldest Prince of Wei was also very happy. This idiot can't do anything right. He deserves to be humiliated. After that, the performance continued. The former fifth Prince of Wei wasn't as active as before. The former eldest Prince of Wei gradually took over the main stage. He also toasted from time to time and said a few words. However, Li Hongyuan didn't say anything because he wasn't sure of the other party's attitude. He didn't want to embarrass himself. Li Hongyuan was not interested in such occasions, but he had to give Lu Chengdi some face. Otherwise, he would most likely not show up. The others were basically sitting upright, but he lazily supported his chin with one hand and used the other to pinch a nut from the table. The hard shell was as easy as pinching a peanut shell. It looked very easy, but he didn't eat the kernel inside. He put it all into the small plate beside Jingwan's hand. Jingwan occasionally took one and ate it. Then, she whispered to the seventh princess consort, who was sitting on her right. Because Li Hongyuan was close to the side of the minister's seat, his current posture made it seem like he was enjoying the dance, but in fact, it was not. When Jingwan turned back to pick up the nuts again, the small plate was almost full. Wang Ye, it's enough. Li Hongyuan met her gaze indifferently. This prince is bored. Those who didn't know would probably think that Li Hongyuan meant that he didn't peel the nuts especially for her. Don't flatter yourself. Jingwan sighed slightly in her heart. She really didn't know what to say to him. However, based on her understanding of him, he did peel the nuts for her at first, and it was probably true that he was bored. Speaking of which, let alone him, Jingwan also felt quite bored. Originally, on such occasions, it was just to make a good impression, build relationships, or defeat the enemy. By the way, they could express their brotherly respect to the minister on the minister's seat. However, these had nothing to do with Li Hongyuan. He was not interested in doing these things, and he didn't need to do it. Therefore, he felt bored about other people's affairs. The people in the musical house are getting more and more useless. What kind of people are they teaching? They are old-fashioned, boring, and unoriginal. They are all the same. The most important thing is that even if they are taught over and over again, the parts that should be outstanding are also boring and uninteresting. Therefore, the musical house spared no effort and spent countless efforts. The teachers racked their brains to teach the girls, and the girls under them also trained hard day and night. It was not only to satisfy the minister and be rewarded, but also to avoid being disliked and punished if they didn't do well. After all, the people in the musical house were basically the family members of guilty officials. These people were much more inferior than many ordinary palace servants. Moreover, there were many perverts in the musical house. For those who used to be high and mighty, after falling into their hands, they liked to abuse them in all kinds of ways to get psychological pleasure. The more beautiful they were and the more famous they were, the more insults they would suffer. It seemed that they would become more noble if they trampled on those who used to be noble. It was not that no one wanted to use the identity of dancers or singers in the musical house to get the attention of the minister on the dragon throne and get rid of the frightening place of the musical house. However, such people were very few. In addition to attracting the beauty and talent of the minister, they also needed enough patience and to know how to observe people's expressions. The most important thing was that they had to put themselves low enough. If they wanted to achieve their goal, they had to at least live and at least keep their faces. These were not easy things. I think it's not bad. Your Highness is too picky, Jingwan said with a smile. Your Highness is too picky. As long as it's not too horrible to look at, everything is fine. Yes, yes, yes. Your Highness, whatever you say. Jingwan smiled good-naturedly. However, if you ask this concubine to say, it's because your Highness has seen too much of it and is naturally tired of it. This concubine is different. In the past, when I was in Qi and Prefecture, things like listening to music and appreciating dance were very rare. Li Hongyuan snorted and said in his heart, You are tired of it, aren't you? Originally, After people paid attention to people like Li Hongyuan at first, few people would pay attention to him. After all, there was no benefit to him, and he might cause trouble for himself. However, even so, most people's attention was still on him. He was too special, and it was impossible not to pay attention to him. In this case, when you are free, let the musical house send people to the prince's mansion. After the birthday, you will have more free time. Even if it's once every other day, after a year and a half, it won't be too late for your highness to come and tell me what you think. Li Hongyuan suggested leisurely, wanting to let his princess experience his mood this morning. Your highness, you did it on purpose, didn't you? In this way, even if you are not tired of it, you will be tired of it. After that, what can you do to pass the time? Isn't there an opera troupe in the mansion? If that's not enough, you can add in a folk vaudeville troupe. Otherwise, you can find a storyteller. Let them line up and wait. You can choose whatever you want. You can do the same thing every day or mix them together. It's up to you. The living king of hell was indifferent. He spoke as if these were all his own pets and could do whatever he wanted. Jingwan looked a little helpless. Let's not talk about other things. Just the famous opera troupes in the capital have to be booked at least 1 or 2 months in advance. It's not up to me. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan and suddenly straightened up. If I want someone, who dares to compete with me? If I order it today, who dares to delay it until tomorrow? Although he was as indifferent as always, the domineering inside was obvious, and it was natural to be domineering. Jingwan was choked by his words, let alone others. No wonder all the enemies in the capital didn't have any friends. With this kind of conduct, it would be strange if he had any friends. In fact, even if Li Hongyuan's personality wasn't so bad, he probably didn't have any friends. Because he was an old man with a young shell. Those who were the same age as his shell were far inferior to him. In his eyes, those people were like little children. And for those who were the same age as his shell, he was at least a level higher than them. Moreover, he believed that his body was young and his heart wasn't old. Naturally, he couldn't get along with those old fogies. Therefore, the people in front of him were either little children or old men. He just happened to be in the middle, so it would be strange if he had any friends. Of course, in Li Hongyuan's eyes, no matter if it was the shell or the core, his wife was the closest to him. In short, he firmly refused to admit that he was an old cow nibbling on young grass. Jingwan didn't say anything. She just glanced at the emperor's seat. Li Hongyuan turned to look at Lu Chengdi. That's true. Imperial father can still snatch. The veins on Lu Chengdi's forehead popped out again. He almost smashed the cup in his hand. I don't have the time. Not to mention that Lu Chengdi was busy every day and couldn't be indulged in pleasure. Moreover, how could people from outside the palace casually enter the palace? Even if a certain opera troupe entered the palace, it would be strictly examined. There were a lot of things to do. Although he was the emperor, he was far less free than people from outside the palace. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan again. The only one who can snatch doesn't know how to snatch at all. So, princess consort, you can rest assured and do whatever you want. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6824632. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 396. Jingwan only wanted to seal a certain someone's mouth. Not only was he drawing hatred for himself, but he was also drawing hatred for her? Imperial concubine Su also spoke up at this time. Yuan, what are you talking about? Do you think everyone is like you, doing such shameful things all day long? Although your princess consort is not from an aristocratic family, she is still from a scholarly family. Her words and actions are measured, and she is generous and decent. She is also deeply influenced by her grandfather and grandmother. She is a model of proper etiquette. You should learn from her. These words sounded like a complete praise for Jingwan. In fact, imperial concubine Su, who knew Jingwan's nature, said these words to raise Jingwan up high. As the saying goes, the higher the image, the better. Once she did something wrong, she would be attacked and criticized even more. In fact, imperial concubine Su was playing a trick. To put it bluntly, she was treating Princess Consort Rue the same way she treated Princess Consort Rue. She was putting shackles on Princess Consort Rue, so that she could not do as she pleased. However, not many people could see this, except for Princess Consort Rue, who was deeply harmed, and Prince Rue, who knew his mother relatively well. Li Hongyuan, of course, knew this method very well. Jingwan had little contact with her, but she knew a lot about her. Moreover, as the person being targeted, how could she not feel it? Other than her, the only other person who knew this was Qin Shufei. She glanced at noble consort Su as an incomprehensible emotion flashed through her eyes. Jingwan just smiled and did not say anything. After all, imperial concubine Su was talking to Li Hongyuan. It was not good for her to rashly interrupt. Li Hongyuan calmly met imperial consort Su's gaze. Imperial consort mother really likes a graceful and modest gentleman like Li Hongming. If imperial consort mother has the same expectations for a Ken, then imperial consort mother is destined to be disappointed. If a Ken could learn to be obedient, I would have done so long ago. Noble consort Su didn't expect that her words would touch her son's sensitive nerves again. She was just used to treating Jingwan. The essence was on Jingwan, not her son. Moreover, she was also used to teaching her son a lesson. Both of her sons had been like this since they were young. If they did something wrong, she would teach them a lesson and punish them. She never felt that it was wrong. However, ever since the incident last time, this pattern was broken. She had to pay more attention to what she said to her son. She didn't pay attention to it just now. Imperial mother didn't mean that. If it weren't for the fact that she was considering this occasion, noble consort Su would have lost her composure. When a woman marries, she follows her husband. No matter what Lady Luo did in the past, since she married me, she naturally follows me. Noble consort Su had the illusion that she had lifted a stone and smashed it on her own foot. Without a doubt, Jingwan was simply forced to wallow in the mire with the living king of hell. If she wasn't arrogant or overbearing, and instead maintained the upright rules, wouldn't that be singing a different tune from her own husband? Forget about other people, but who was Jin Qin Wang Ah? He was the living king of hell Ah. Singing a different tune from him, was she disliking that her life was too long Ah? Jingwan held back her laughter. This was simply giving her a big halo of arrogant in the presence of her husband. In the future, it was only right for her to become more and more arrogant and overbearing. Moreover, it had nothing to do with the Luo family. After all, before Jingwan got married, although her reputation wasn't prominent, it was still pretty good Ah. The elders were especially fond of her Ah. Therefore, it was said that the living king of hell protecting his wife was really too much. Imperial mother really didn't mean that, naturally. AI. Alright, don't say these depressing words. Lu Chengdi faintly said. On noble consort Su's face, she wanted to say something but hesitated. Her seemingly sad expression instantly froze. Fortunately, she restrained herself quickly, otherwise it would have been very exciting. Tonight, she almost couldn't hold back her laughter again. Although Lu Chengdi was a scum, but because of Li Hongyuan's many years of deliberate creation, he was indeed extremely biased towards Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan ignored him, but he still stuck to him and looked for abuse. The other sons racked their brains to curry favor with him, but he said that they had ulterior motives. If they did something wrong, he would definitely wildly criticize them. Perhaps he wouldn't do anything to them, but he would definitely cut off their wings more or less. As for Li Hongyuan, Lu Chengdi was often angered by him to the point of stamping with thunder, but he was just all bark and no bite. Even if it was noble consort Su, Lu Qingdi was obviously biased towards his son. From this point of view, Lu Qingdi was often blessed by God. The atmosphere was strange for a moment, and then it seemed to return to normal. However, everything after that seemed to be very dull. Perhaps it was because noble consort Su's disdain made him sad again, but this sadness turned into an inexplicable anger. Li Hongyuan vented his anger on others. Whenever someone said a few words, he coldly threw out the word noisy. Lu Qingdi acted as if he didn't hear and didn't ask, so the people below had to obediently shut up. In fact, Lu Qingdi was quite relieved that this evil creature didn't directly leave. Otherwise, he would more or less lose his dignity in front of the people of other countries. Because of Li Hongyuan's disturbance, it seemed that some people who wanted to achieve a certain goal had to give up in the end. And so, the welcoming banquet passed by uneventfully. The only thing that wasn't peaceful was that some people's hearts were in chaos. When Jing Wan left the palace, she glanced at Princess Yi Ning, who frequently peeked at Li Hongyuan. However, because of the occasion, she still restrained herself. As long as one didn't deliberately pay attention to her, one basically wouldn't notice. However, this kind of thing, as the person involved, she simply couldn't be too sensitive. Jing Wan thought that she really guessed it right. She actually had her eyes on someone. This was the real version of the evildoer who brought disaster to the country. She just hoped that Princess Yi Ning's mind was still clear and she wouldn't do anything stupid. Jing Wan believed that there were some things that she would never be soft-hearted about. In the next few days, Li Hongyuan used all his strength to train He Zhihai to death because He Zhihai was really too weak. His fists were like cotton. Once Li Hongyuan's sea of consciousness fought, he was a person who fought based on his instincts. What Li Hongyuan wanted to do now was to ruthlessly change this point. This was not something that could be accomplished overnight. However, when He Zhihai's consciousness got used to using his brain in a big fight, coupled with his super-strong beastly intuition, he might not even need to deliberately learn things like military strategy and tactics, and he would be able to learn them without a teacher. And once this kind of person graduated, they would usually not walk the righteous path, but the path of trickery. At the same time, envoys from other countries also arrived one after another. These people's cultural background was far different from Qi Yuan's. They were definitely different in many aspects. The most obvious thing that was displayed on the outside was definitely their clothing. It could be said that they were in a variety of styles, and it made the people see a lot of strange things. The welcoming banquet continued. Naturally, it was completely different from the first one. Even if there were women present, they would no longer receive special treatment. Digression, https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6824636. HTML. There is an error in the chapter. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bicon. Com mobile version reading website. Bicon.com. Chapter 397. The reception banquet continued. Naturally, it was completely different from the first reception banquet. Even if there were women present, there was no special treatment. Moreover, the customs of these countries were more open than the Qi Yuan. It was normal for women to go out and even establish their own families. There were even cases of women becoming officials. Of course, these had nothing to do with Jing Wan. Without that special reception banquet, Li Hongyuan didn't need help. Basically, there was no problem at all for her to continue staying in Jin Qin Wang Fu. However, the heavens didn't fulfill people's wishes. Jing Wan held the invitation from Princess Wei Yining. In another country's territory, there are still so many things to do. Princess Yi Ning was like a guest who was holding a banquet in someone else's house and invited a lot of hosts with great fanfare. Of course, this house was very big and there were a lot of people. This guest hadn't invited the real master of the house. Even so, it was still very inconceivable. It's up to you whether to go or not. If you don't want to go, you don't need to care. Li Hongyuan said. Jingwan's gaze fell on Li Hongyuan. With a smile that wasn't a smile, she opened her mouth. I'm the person that Princess Yi Ning really wants to invite. The other people are just incidental. The invitation also said sincerely that you must give face. In any case, you're a country's princess on the same level as Qi Yuan. It's not good to not give face. It should be known that the people that Princess Yi Ning invited were not in the minority. Whether it was married or not, there were also a bunch of Qin Wangfei and Zhun Wangfei. Just because she said to give face, I'll give face. Who does she think she is? Also, what does she mean by the person that she really wants to invite is you? Did the invitation say that? Is Wang Ye pretending to be confused? The person that she really wants to invite is just the so-called. Her goal is you, Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan slightly raised his eyes. So, Wan's meaning is, you still want to give face to a woman who wants your husband's invitation. You think that it's not good to not go? Jingwan pursed her lips and smiled. I really thought Wang Ye didn't know. However, according to what your highness said, I really don't need to give him any face. Even if Li Hongyuan didn't experience what happened in his previous life, with his sharp senses, how could he not know that he had been stared at eagerly for a long time? And the meaning of those gazes, even if they were young men who hadn't yet awakened to love, didn't know what 1 or 2 or 3 gazes meant. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, dozens, hundreds, or even more. In his previous life, Li Hongyuan didn't have a bad reputation. On the contrary, he had a good reputation. He was definitely the one with the most romantic luck. Many women fell for him one after another. For men, this kind of thing might satisfy their vanity at the beginning, but when the number of women increased, it would be very annoying. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan wasn't keen on this from the start. Just like that, Jingwan really didn't attend the banquet. She didn't even give an excuse to postpone it. It was as if she hadn't received the invitation. She didn't respond at all. Speaking of which, there were many people who were watching her actions. When she didn't respond, many of them were a little uneasy. However, in this case, others would tacitly agree that she would attend the banquet. However, in the end, Jingwan's slap was really harsh. Regardless of what Princess Yi Ning was thinking, Jingwan's attitude of ignoring her completely was a slap to her face. In her own country, Princess Yi Ning could be said to be able to get whatever she wanted. No matter who it was, they would have to give her some face. She had never been treated like this before, so how could she not be angry? When all the people who came for him, except for Jingwan, she almost exploded on the spot. Even if she didn't smash things or throw a tantrum, she still mocked and ridiculed a few words, saying that Qi Yuan thought highly of himself and didn't put other countries in his eyes, and so on. Speaking of which, no matter who was present and whether they had any grudges against Jingwan, at this time, whether they were willing or not, they had to stand on Jingwan's side. If they stood on Princess Yi Ning's side and accused Jingwan of being rude, they would be scolded to death by their own people. Princess Yi Ning was favored and powerful. Compared to Princess Min Xiang, how much weaker could she be? Therefore, she scolded back on the spot. Her meaning was obvious. Who do you think you are? You are just a princess of the former way. Do you really think you can represent the former way? How shameless are you? If you are really favored, why would you show your face in public and run to other countries? What can a princess do in other countries? Nothing more than find a man. Sixth sister-in-law didn't come alone. Even if there were so many people, it was not giving you face. So angry, what's wrong? Do you like sixth imperial brother? Princess, you like a married man. Do you have any shame? Do you know how to write the word shame? Wait, Princess Min Xiang went all out and didn't hold back at all. Princess Yi Ning's thoughts were exposed and she was humiliated like this. Her face turned red and she almost lost her composure. However, she didn't feel much better. She never knew what tolerance was. She returned the favor on the spot and didn't hold back either. Speaking of which, Princess Min Xiang was just saying it casually. After all, Li Hongyuan's face was there. She was so afraid of him that sometimes she would be distracted when looking at him. Not to mention those girls who were raised in the boudoir and didn't know the taste of the world. She didn't want to accidentally hit the nail on the head. Although Princess Min Xiang wasn't born from the Empress didn't have a daughter. Therefore, Princess Min Xiang's status was the highest among the sisters. In addition, Lu Chengdi liked her. Her status was not much different from Princess Yi Ning's in the former way. The two of them had the same status. To a certain extent, they were natural enemies. To put it bluntly, they were like two female tigers on the top of the mountain. When they were in their own territory, they naturally didn't do anything. They each lived their own lives and were domineering and arrogant. But once they met, they would definitely fight. Even if there was no reason, they would definitely fight in seconds. Therefore, although it hadn't reached the point of fighting, the scene could be said to be chaotic. This banquet naturally ended prematurely. Those who weren't willing to come to this banquet would definitely not stay any longer. They would leave and beat each other up. And the two princesses were naturally unbearably angry. Even though they left, the anger in their hearts didn't dissipate. Naturally, they didn't stop talking. Princess Min Xiang said what kind of thing Princess Yi Ning was. She dared to flaunt her power in Qi Yuan. She was already giving face to the former way by not giving her face. And Princess Yi Ning said that Princess Min Xiang was uneducated and unruly. She even called herself a royal princess. She was simply an out-and-out shrew. The commotion wasn't small. Very soon, those who should know and those who shouldn't know all knew about it. Princess Yi Ning went to her two elder brothers and complained in all kinds of ways, not to mention the former way's fifth prince. He was already seriously injured. In the end, he didn't care about his body. Not only did he force himself to attend the banquet, he even drank without restraint. Without a doubt, it affected the normal recovery of his injuries. Because he drank too much, it was difficult for his wounds to heal. He must have suffered many times. Because of this, he definitely wasn't in the mood to care about Princess Yi Ning. Princess Yi Ning went to the door and only received one word, "Scram." And her eldest royal brother looked at her coldly. That gaze was unprecedentedly cold. Yi Ning trembled under his gaze. She couldn't continue crying. Finally, the former way's eldest royal prince revealed a cold smile. "Yi Ning, don't think that koala doesn't know what you're thinking. I have to say, you really have a lot of guts. Of course, you're also a little clever. But do you think you can achieve your goal by doing this? You're indeed a naive little girl who doesn't know the ways of the world." "I don't understand what eldest royal brother is saying." Yi Ning's gaze was somewhat erratic. She didn't dare to look straight at her elder brother. "Ah," the former way's eldest royal prince chuckled with endless ridicule. "Fine. Yi Ning doesn't understand. This elder brother will explain it to you clearly. When you held this banquet, although I didn't know your purpose at first, I let you mess around. But now, no matter who didn't show up, even if it wasn't Jin Qian Wang Fei, anyone, you would probably use it as a pretext to make a fuss. Even if everyone you invited arrived, you would still look for trouble. And your essential purpose is to make a fuss about Jin Qian Wang to get rid of your predetermined fate. In your eyes, you are the most honorable princess of Dewei. Now, you're just a souffle of a Wangye who has no power or influence. In addition, the two countries are hostile. If this matter succeeds, then Qi Yuan will take advantage of it. Qi Yuan has no reason to disagree. If you make a fuss about it, they only need to push the boat with the current. When the time comes, Dewei can only help you. That's what you think, right?" Princess Yi Ning was completely exposed. She simply didn't hide it anymore. Facing her eldest royal brother, she became bold and confident. "So what if I am? Yi Ning, you are Dewei's princess. You are extraordinarily honorable. Dewei gave birth to you and raised you, giving you the best of everything. Because of your own selfishness, you disregarded the face and interests of the entire Dewey. Who are you worthy of? Even if it's Fu Huang, if he knew, I'm afraid that he couldn't wait to slap you to death. Princess Yi Ning's face was gloomy and cold. Even that pair of beautiful eyes were destroyed at this moment. I'm Dewey's most honorable princess? Those lowly bastards that were born by sluts didn't go to the political marriage. Each and every one of them went to the capital to choose a prince consort, build a Princess Fu, enjoy glory and splendor, free and unfettered. But you want to marry me to a barren land, lonely and without anyone to rely on. My little life is always threatened. You treat me like this, why do you still want me to think for Dewey? You treat me like this, so I naturally have to think for myself. Dewey's interests and face, go to hell. Princess Yi Ning was hysterical, her voice sharp. The former Wei crown prince inexplicably smiled. He took 2 steps forward and suddenly reached out to pinch Princess Yi Ning's chin, not allowing her to struggle at all. You know best who caused your situation today. If it weren't for those things, would you have been pushed out for the political marriage? Yi Ning, you should know that not executing you is already a great kindness. You still want to enjoy glory and splendor in the capital, dream on? Originally, if you were obedient, I might have helped you and chosen a better husband for you. But what you did made me very unhappy. What do you think I should do? Princess Yi Ning slapped his hand away. It's not my fault, it's not my fault. Just because he's a man, the crown prince, and I'm a woman, everything should be borne by me? Based on what? Based on what? She looked crazy, her eyes were full of unwillingness, resentment, and indescribable sadness. The former Wei crown prince's eyes flashed with excitement. So it was all true, really. If he caught the real evidence, then Dewey's crown prince, who was at the peak of his power, would. Yi Ning, I also know that you've been wronged. How about you tell me everything? As long as you tell me, I'll help you stay in Qi Yuan. How about it? Princess Yi Ning gradually came back to her senses. Are you tricking me? She clearly acted as if she knew everything. But thinking about it, if she really knew, she would have used this matter to make things difficult for the crown prince. How could there be no movement until now? After all, this matter had not happened in a day or two. She had lost control of her emotions for a moment. It's not impossible for you to think so. Yi Ning, consider this elder brother's words. If this elder brother ascends the throne, I will also be your strongest backing. I guarantee that you will not suffer the slightest grievance. Even if Great Wei and Qi Yuan are at war, I will similarly not let you suffer any harm. Anyway, you don't care about Dewey anymore. Naturally, you don't have to care about the crown prince. Besides, he's the one who caused you to be like this. Princess Yi Ning's eyes flashed with struggle. Yes, it was all his fault. It was all her brother's fault. But, mother, what a silly girl. If the Empress didn't agree, you naturally wouldn't be like this. It's obvious that she has abandoned you. Don't try to drive a wedge between us. Mother has always loved me the most. Princess Yi Ning naturally didn't believe his words. She remembered how heartbroken her mother was when she left the capital. If there was a way, her mother wouldn't. You're really stupid. If you protect the crown prince, she may become the Empress Dowager in the future and enjoy honor and wealth. Without the crown prince, do you think she can still live like that? When her position was not threatened, you were naturally her favorite child. You almost ruined everything for her. I'm afraid she even has the heart to strangle you to death. Impossible, Princess Yi Ning screamed. Whether it's possible or not, you know best in your heart. Now that it's like this, why do you have to deceive yourself and others, Yi Ning? The former Wei crown prince had a gentle smile on his lips. He pinched Princess Yi Ning's neck, forcing her to look at him. Although Yi Ning is a little arrogant, she's not an ignorant fool, right? Not sure if it was his actions or words that had an effect, but Princess Yi Ning gradually calmed down. She looked at the former Wei crown prince for a long time. At first, her eyes were still a little unfocused, as if she was recalling something. Gradually, her eyes became firm. She pushed away her brother's hand and tidied up her messy hair and clothes. She became the noble princess again, even if she was arrogant and unrestrained. Why should I believe you? Yi Ning, you don't have a choice now, do you? So you can only believe me. Princess Yi Ning's eyes were gloomy, but she didn't lose her composure. Okay, after this is done, before you leave the capital of Qi Yuan, I will tell you. The former Wei Crown Prince smiled and nodded. He didn't express any dissatisfaction. In this way, the brother and sister reached an agreement. Under the control of the former Wei Crown Prince, some things became more and more clear. So in less than 2 days, the envoys from other countries who came one after another heard about this matter. For Li Hongyuan, this was just like a romantic affair. He was just lucky in love. The harshest words to hear were, "He just has a good appearance, but it can't cover up the fact that he is useless." There was nothing more to it. The one who was hurt the most was naturally Princess Yi Ning. Her background was like this. Even if she was treated unfairly and hurt, she could only suffer more rumors and slanders, and suffer the most bitter attacks. Moreover, she was the princess of the former Wei. Anyone she liked would suffer less than those who liked Qi Yuan, because not only would they attack her from a small angle, they would also criticize her from the righteousness of the country. Originally, the other people of the former Wei should be her backing, but at this time, they could only be cold and emotionless, and even criticize her more than outsiders. She used to be held in the palm of others' hands and listened to a lot of flattery. Now, all that filled her ears were abuse and criticism. It was as unpleasant as it could be. Even the people who served her didn't comfort her. Although they didn't treat her like the others, they still looked at her with incomprehensible eyes, and then they kept silent. Princess Yi Ning only felt wronged and indignant. She just liked a man and didn't do anything outrageous. Why did everyone treat her like this? In anger, she naturally smashed all kinds of things and drove out all the people closest to her. For this kind of thing, the only person Princess Yi Ning could complain to was her first imperial brother. The former Wei Crown Prince comforted her softly as she wished, but in fact, he didn't put his heart into it. According to the former Wei Crown Prince's temperament and the Qi Yuan's Prince Rui's temperament, he should know that if he really put his heart into it, he wouldn't say such perfunctory words. Why did this matter become so big? Is this how you help me? Princess Yi Ning listened to his repeated words and became more and more annoyed. She began to question him discontentedly. Anyway, it was her first imperial brother who needed her now. She wasn't afraid. The former Wei Crown Prince didn't get angry, although she didn't know if he was really not angry or just pretending. Yi Ning's words are heart-wrenching. If I didn't stop them, you would have been scolded by the Wei Kingdom's officials. You know that this time, there is a famous Iron Mouth official accompanying you. As long as he catches something, he will be merciless. He is the most upright and selfless. Even Father Emperor has a headache because of him. Do you think he will let this matter go so easily? He didn't go to you. All the pressure is borne by me. Yi Ning, your words are making me sad. When Princess Yi Ning heard this, she couldn't help but tremble. When she was in the Great Wei, because of some of her matters, even her imperial mother was impeached. She hated and feared that old man, but there was nothing wrong with his conduct. He was also loyal and devoted. Even if imperial father had a headache, he never punished him. Thinking of this, she gnashed her teeth in hatred. The former Wei Crown Prince continued, "As for the outside matters, this is the capital of Qi Yuan. It is not the capital of the Wei Kingdom. The entire courier station is filled with Qi Yuan people. We have to rely on them for food and drink. Some things are out of our control. However, looking on the bright side, the people of Qi Yuan seem to be adding fuel to the fire. Presumably, they are also interested in what you are thinking. The reason why they are stepping on you is merely to lower your status and seek benefits for their Qi Yuan. What right do they have to do this?" Princess Yi Ning was sad and angry. Tears fell down her cheeks. What a silly girl. What else do you need? The former Wei Kingdom and Qi Yuan are enemies. Then, isn't it natural for them to belittle the other party? Moreover, This girl has to hold on to her status and wait for others to marry her. Only then can she raise her status. If she throws herself at them, no matter how noble she is, she will be as cheap as mud." The former Wei crown prince chuckled. Such undisguised mockery. Princess Yi Ning glared at him hatefully. The former Wei crown prince did not mind. They were temporarily in the same boat, but it did not mean that he would be obedient to her. If you want to achieve your goal, you naturally have to be patient. Yi Ning, if you feel that you can't take it anymore, I will go and meet the Emperor of Qi Yuan and ask him to suppress this matter. I can even turn the tables and say that Qi Yuan is ruining the reputation of our Wei Kingdom's princess. From this, we can ask the Emperor of Qi Yuan for benefits. But in this way, what you want will no longer be possible. No. Princess Yi Ning immediately rejected. When she thought of the appearance of Prince Jin of Qi Yuan, she could not help but blush and her heart beat faster. She had never seen such a good-looking man. Since the beginning of love, this was the first time her heart had been moved. Previously, she had a hazy good impression of the outstanding young masters of the Wei Kingdom. But the moment she saw Prince Jin of Qi Yuan, she threw it out of the window. When the former Wei crown prince saw her shy appearance in an instant, he did not need to guess to know what she was thinking. Their Wei Kingdom's most honorable princess was willing to lower herself like this. It was no wonder that she would be trampled on. With her like this, even if she achieved her wish, she would not have a good ending. She was blinded by love and did not think about the situation of the two countries. Did she think that by sticking to him, she would be able to get the favor she wanted? Did she think that she was an outstanding beauty, or did she have the means to control people's hearts? Prince Jin of Qi Yuan, that kind of person, it was obvious that he had seen countless beauties. An enemy country's princess was specially sent to his door to be humiliated and vented. Therefore, if Princess Yi Ning was like this, then no matter how unpleasant it was to hear, she would still have to bear it. Although this was basically expected, the former Wei crown prince still felt that it was a bit strange. After all, if Yi Ning's reputation was too bad, then Qi Yuan would also be criticized if they accepted her. After all, if a man's woman was too bad, then he would usually be ridiculed and ridiculed. Unless Qi Yuan only wanted to trample on Yi Ning to belittle the former Wei Kingdom and did not want to accept this person at all. When he thought of this possibility, the former Wei crown prince slightly narrowed his eyes. However, this was not in line with the rules of benefits. No matter how he thought about it, it was more beneficial to accept this person. It would damage the reputation of the former Wei Kingdom and they would get a beauty. Moreover, in order to not lose face, the former Wei Kingdom would definitely give a generous dowry. On the other hand, Qi Yuan would not give any betrothal gifts. As the saying goes, if you want to marry or not, then you are not the official wife, so there are not so many rules to follow. Furthermore, now that things had escalated to this stage, if Qi Yuan did not pick her up, then Yi Ning would only have a dead end. If she died, then everything would be written off. Former Wei would definitely turn around and cause trouble for Qi Yuan. This was something that Qi Yuan could not possibly be unaware of. So, what was the problem? What was the problem? On Qi Yuan's side, everyone, including Lu Chengdi, wanted to know what the problem was. However, the former Wei crown prince had a conspiracy theory, and so did the Qi Yuan side. After hearing the rumors, they knew that the former Wei Kingdom's people did not immediately come to Lu Chengdi to suppress the matter. However, the strange thing was that even if Princess Yi Ning had her own plans, the former Wei Kingdom's crown prince and a few of the former Wei Kingdom's important officials would not be so foolish as to ruin their reputation and make such a big deal out of it. Who would believe that there was no conspiracy? However, no matter how hard they racked their brains, they could not figure out what the former Wei Kingdom was trying to do. In fact, some of the officials in Qi Yuan had a rough idea of what was going on, especially the Minister of Personnel. However, no one would say anything. Indeed, if they went to the King of Hell, the male lead of this scandal, he might be able to tell them what the problem was. Speaking of which, the source of this scandal was Princess Min Xiang. She was the one who unknowingly exposed the matter. Princess Yi Ning had not done anything yet. In Jingwan's opinion, even if they wanted to do something, they would have to wait for Princess Yi Ning to come to them. Then, she would see her husband's methods. It was just a simple order, but he was simply too good at it. However, Jingwan felt that it was a little out of character to let the King of Hell use such methods that were more inclined towards the inner residents. She did not hold back and asked directly. Li Hongyuan could not help but laugh. He hugged Jingwan and ruffled her hair. She was quite smart. Why did she go into a dead end on this kind of question? There is no distinction between good and bad methods. As long as the goal is achieved perfectly, you can use different methods on different people. You can't think that a man is not a man just because he uses inner residence methods. You have to know that some people can't be too generous because it won't work. A black cat or a white cat. If it can catch a mouse, it is a good cat. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows. Although this description is not completely correct, it is close. I know. After all, you have to choose the right person to use the method on. You don't have to choose the color of the cat's fur to catch a mouse. I was just thinking about it wrongly. It was probably because she had heard comments such as, a man using a woman's methods. It's a little petty that she did not immediately understand. In fact, these are not important. This time, the main thing is to tell Wan Wan that when dealing with enemies, even if they haven't done anything, you have to be prepared in advance. Even if you don't kill them directly, you have to be prepared for a rainy day so that you can be invincible in the future. In the end, you are still too soft-hearted. You don't take action when others haven't done anything, and when some things really happen, it may be too late to do anything. It's good to be on guard, but you can only be a thief for 1,000 days, but not a thief for 1,000 days. The best way is to catch the thief. For such an obvious enemy, you should take the initiative to gain the upper hand. Jingwan was stunned. Although Li Hongyuan might be making a mountain out of a molehill for this matter, what about other things in the future? What about those enemies who obviously wanted to take people's lives at all times? Could they still passively wait for the enemy to strike first? Even if they were on guard, they could not guarantee that nothing would go wrong at all times. It was not like when they were in the Luo family now. No matter how fierce it was just a small matter. It was also not like in their previous life. Now, people could easily take people's lives. Even if it was not for themselves, they had to do something for the people they cared about. If they waited until the moment something happened to change, it might really be too late. Jingwan hugged Li Hongyuan and buried her head in his neck. Ah Yuan, I know. Li Hongyuan gently stroked Jingwan's back. He didn't want to force Jingwan to grow up, but it was better to do it step by step than to do it all at once. One had to know that growing up in an instant was often very cruel. Most people simply couldn't handle it and broke down. Li Hongyuan couldn't be more familiar with that feeling. He hoped that Jingwan would not be so gentle to the enemy. Those women who threw themselves at her were secondary. The main thing was the current situation. Although he was strategizing, he might not be able to take care of everything. Because he was a human, not a god. Moreover, Wan Wan's soft-heartedness may be exploited by others. This Princess Yi Ning's future matters, leave it to me to deal with. After all, this Princess Yi Ning was not only a love rival, but also a real enemy in the truest sense. Kindness to the enemy was cruelty to oneself. This sentence was not just for show, especially when it was between two hostile countries. Okay, that's not a problem. Li Hongyuan naturally raised both hands in agreement when his wife was willing to do it. Looking at the current situation, if we don't accept that Princess Yi Ning, she seems to have a dead end. But we can't let her die. It's completely impossible for you to accept her. Why don't we find someone else to take over? Not only can we save her life, but the man who takes over, others won't dare to make irresponsible remarks. Li Hongyuan smiled. Wan Wan wants to give us a concubine? Can't we? Jingwan also smiled. Think about it. She is a princess of a country. How wronged it is to be a concubine to a powerless prince like you. But it's different if she is imperial father's concubine. As long as she is given a slightly higher position, it will be giving face to the former way. After all, they are an unrestrained princess. Not only did we accept her, but we also gave her enough honor. If the former way doesn't reciprocate, won't they feel embarrassed? That's right. Li Hongyuan expressed his agreement. But if this matter is to be done, I can only say that I can't do it. What's done can't be undone. It's not difficult. If this kind of thing happens to the emperor, then it's purely a romantic affair. No one will say anything. Li Hongyuan didn't care about it. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan. What was it? Stuffing someone into the emperor's bed? In fact, it wasn't difficult. Especially for the concubines in the harem, it was normal to find someone else to serve them when it was inconvenient. But Princess Yi Ning was different. She wasn't an ordinary woman. She wasn't a woman who could be casually stuffed into a man's bed. Basically, no one had the guts to do so. In everyone's imagination, this was something that they wouldn't even think about. But someone said it so casually. To be honest, it was hard not to admire him. In this way, I still have to rely on you, Ah Yuan. Wan, it's not that you can't do it. As long as you have the power in your husband's hands, do you want to try? Li Hongyuan tempted. Jingwan was startled. If that was really the case, then he would be directly sharing the supreme power with her. This was indeed a temptation. Not only did it come from being able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, it also came from the unreserved love. After all, if a man had even the slightest bit of reservation towards a woman, he would definitely not do such a thing. Well, I also want to see how much power Ah Yuan has in his hands. Well, it shouldn't disappoint you, Wan. In this way, the matter was finalized. After getting in touch with Li Hongyuan's many things, Jingwan began to contact his subordinates who work for him. Li Hongyuan personally compiled a list for Jingwan, and this list once again surprised Jingwan. For so many years, the news about the living Hell King had not been exposed. Then, Jingwan had reason to believe that these people were all loyal. As long as he was willing, he could even ascend to the throne now. Although it may cause a lot of turmoil, and even lead to the Qi-Yuan civil war before the external troubles were resolved. Once again, she mourned for his other brothers and Lu Qingdi. It was really too tragic. Li Hongyuan did not intervene, so Jingwan had to rely on her own judgment to decide who to send to carry out this matter. Of course, she had to clear up the internal relationships. Li Hongyuan did not personally explain anything to her. Instead, he left an Yi to her. An Yi did not have to take the initiative to say anything, but he had to answer all of Jingwan's questions without reserve. This was a big test for Jingwan. If there was something that she did not understand or if there was any carelessness, this matter could go wrong. After all, the person she was scheming against was Lu Qingdi. If something were to happen, it would not be as simple as being held accountable by Lu Qingdi. It was very likely that Li Hongyuan would be exposed. Jingwan was very clear about these things, so she could not act carelessly. She had to be very careful and cautious. Thus, just to understand this matter, Jingwan spent a few days before she finally decided on a preliminary plan. However, at this time, Jingwan's heart was beating fast. Her palms were faintly sweaty. There was no other way. This matter concerned Li Hongyuan. It was impossible for her not to be nervous. It was rare for her to have the thought of retreating. Would Li Hongyuan allow her to retreat? Absolutely not. Wan, you should believe in yourself. That's not the problem. In my eyes, this is the essence of the problem. Wan, as long as you do this, it's enough. Li Hongyuan was like this. Jingwan closed her eyes and opened them again. The uneasiness in her eyes had all disappeared, leaving only firmness and fearlessness. Jingwan spent another 2 days carefully deliberating the plan. She improved it again and again. After considering all aspects, she came up with the final plan. It could be said that this was the first time that Jingwan had spent so much effort to think deeply about something. It was mentally exhausting, but when it was really completed, there was also an indescribable sense of accomplishment. When the final arrangement was made, Jingwan glanced at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan did not say anything. He just smiled and nodded. Jing-Yuan exhaled, called an E, and gave orders one by one. Li Hongyuan listened quietly at the side. During the whole process of Jing-Yuan making the plan, he did not look at it. And Jing-Yuan was focused on the matter, so he did not disturb her. He completely played the role of the man behind her. Listening now, it was not in vain that Wan spent so much effort. As long as there were no accidents, the final result would be perfect. And this possible accident was that the executor made a mistake. This was not something that anyone could absolutely control. However, Jing-Yuan did not need to worry about it. Speaking of it, this kind of thing originally only needed to be ordered by Li Hongyuan, and the people below would naturally find ways to complete it. The reason why Jing-Yuan was given full authority to make the decision this time was to let Jing-Yuan be familiar with people and things. When she was clear about all the big and small things, she only needed to move her mouth. Like Li Hongyuan, she could control the general direction. After all, if she only relied on her mouth from the beginning, then Jing-Yuan would never be able to truly convince Li Hongyuan's subordinates. Even if they listened to Jing-Yuan's orders, it was only because of Li Hongyuan's orders, and not Jing-Yuan herself. Therefore, Jing-Yuan could never be considered as standing side by side with Li Hongyuan. The plan was very detailed. The people who carried out the plan only needed to be careful and didn't need to use their brains. An E also received the order quite straightforwardly. This matter, he watched the whole process. He saw Jing-Yuan's effort. Other people might still have doubts, or they might think that what his master did to his Wang Fei was too much. Even if he doted on her from the bottom of his heart, there was no need to do this. Once, an E might have had the same idea, but gradually, this idea disappeared. Master and Wang Fei were not ordinary husband and wife. Jing-Yuan suddenly became soft and laid on Li Hongyuan's body. "Ah Yuan, do you think it will succeed? Since it has come to this, there is no need to worry about it anymore. We just need to wait for the final result." Digression: https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/7102969. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bicon. Com mobile version reading website. Bicon.com. Chapter 398. Now that things have come to this, there is no need to fuss over it. We only need to wait for the final result. Jing-Yuan nodded. This was the only way. Unless the plan was cancelled, they could only wait. Instead of thinking about those useless things, it was better to have a good rest. Tired. Jing-Yuan rubbed against Li Hongyuan's body like a spoiled child. If you don't do it personally, you don't know how difficult and exhausting it is. Compared to the things you do, this is just a trivial matter. Looking at how you usually deal with it, it seems as simple as eating and drinking. This kind of thing, I need so many days. This difference. How can this be compared? You are not familiar with it, you don't understand it. You have to start from the beginning. Once you are familiar with it, you can slowly control it. It is just that. You make it sound simple. There are many things that require talent. A certain person was absolutely gifted in this aspect. Some people, even if they were given 10 lifetimes, they still wouldn't be able to learn it. I believe that Wan's talent in this aspect is not bad. Compared to many beginners, Wan has always done very well. Don't praise me, my tail will rise to the sky. It doesn't matter. Don't mention rising to the sky, even if you poke a hole in the sky, I will hold it up. Jing-Yuan clicked her tongue twice and reached out to pinch Li Hongyuan's face. If she was a person whose 3 views had not been molded, she didn't know how spoiled she would be. Li Hongyuan did not avoid or stop her, allowing her hands to mischief on his face. The former Wei eldest prince had asked to see Lu Chengdi once. Although he did not say it clearly, the meaning was almost clear. That was, their Wei princess had indeed taken a fancy to Jin Qinhuang. But their princess was definitely not the kind of woman who was not reserved and frivolous. Her upbringing, talent, and manners were all good. But because it was the first awakening of love, it was hard to restrain oneself. That tone and demeanor were very helpless, completely like a good brother who doted on his younger sister. No matter what, he couldn't bear to make his younger sister sad and also faintly hoped that Lu Chengdi would fulfill his wish. According to him, his sister had been doted on since she was born, including her elders and her brothers. It was only because she yearned for places outside the capital of Great Wei that her imperial father couldn't bear to see her sad face, so he came to Qi Yuan with her 2 elder brothers. However, he didn't expect that this trip would cause her to be filled with love. A grown girl can't be kept at home. Lu Chengdi didn't say anything. He just played Tai Chi with the former Grand Prince of Wei. His words didn't count. His son had a stubborn temper. If he wanted him to marry someone, he had to agree. Otherwise, he would turn the entire capital upside down. My 6th son lost his mother when he was young. It was inevitable that I would favor him more. As a result, I spoiled him more and more until he became more and more undisciplined and out of control. Even my words might not be effective. But what's done is done. I can't really punish him severely. Lu Chengdi was telling the truth, but to the former Grand Prince of Wei, it was full of excuses. In an ordinary family, it wasn't unusual to raise a bastard who disobeyed his father. However, as the emperor of a country, there was absolutely no possibility of his son disobeying him, because he was the emperor first and then the father. Heaven's might couldn't be swept away and the emperor's orders couldn't be disobeyed. Of course, Lu Chengdi also knew that these people wouldn't believe him. So, he simply used the truth to brush them off. There was no need to find excuses at all. How about this? This matter can be discussed after the emperor's birthday. What does the eldest prince think? Lu Chengdi said. In the end, the former Grand Prince of Wei and Lu Chengdi were a big level apart. Naturally, he couldn't say no. However, they probably didn't know that there was no chance to discuss it anymore. There were only 3 more days until the emperor's birthday. There were still 3 countries that hadn't arrived yet. The Western Han Nu was slightly inferior to the former Wei of Qi Yuan, but their customs were quite valiant. The Zongjin was a medium-sized country, but the women's status was very high. The last one was a small country. Because it was located to the west and southwest of the Qi Yuan, it was relatively far from the capital of the Qi Yuan. It wasn't strange that it would be the last to arrive. In fact, it was only a day or 2 earlier. If the former Wei attracted attention because of Princess Yi Ning's great momentum, then the Zongjin delegation was surprising because 1/3 of the entire delegation was made up of women. They were different from Princess Yi Ning in that they were real people in power. Including the delegation this time, the leaders were all women. There were women among the civil officials, and there were even women among the generals. These people were real women who were not inferior to men. Although they didn't occupy half of the Zongjin kingdom, they definitely couldn't be underestimated. When Jingwan learned about the Zongjin kingdom, she was a bit surprised. But more than that, she admired the women. The current king of the Zongjin kingdom was also a wise and open-minded person. Because of him, the status of the women in the Zongjin kingdom rose again. The number of women in the Zongjin kingdom also reached an unprecedented level. There were nearly 3 levels of women in the Zongjin kingdom, and nearly half of them were in the upper middle class. The high status of the women in the Zongjin kingdom wasn't unrelated to their founding queen, who was also a legendary woman. In the Zongjin kingdom, although it was still a monogamous system, it wasn't as serious as other countries. Even the current king of the Zongjin kingdom only had a handful of concubines. And in a family where women were in charge of external affairs and men were in charge of domestic affairs, concubines were basically non-existent. It was normal for men to marry and women to marry. Even if the men were weaker than the women, they wouldn't be criticized. There were male chauvinist, female chauvinist, female chauvinist, female chauvinist, female chauvinist, and male chauvinist. Compared to other countries, it might be strange, but the Songjin kingdom was very harmonious. Moreover, the Songjin kingdom had existed longer than the former Wei. Jingwan read about the Songjin kingdom. To be honest, she had a little bit of yearning in her heart. Li Hongyuan saw it all. In fact, in his previous life, he was greatly influenced by the Songjin kingdom. Of course, Jingwan played a part in it. If Jingwan didn't exist, he would definitely scoff at the customs of the Songjin kingdom. Because it was quite a different feeling. In his previous life, the small countries around the Qi Yuan were directly annexed by the Songjin kingdom, and the big countries couldn't recover for decades. The only country that wasn't touched was the Songjin kingdom. He knew that there must be people who were puzzled, but no one dared to ask him, the absolute hegemon. At that time, Jingwan wasn't around. Other than not touching the Songjin kingdom, he didn't pay much attention to other things. Wan, if you are interested in the history of the Songjin kingdom, you can contact the female officials of the Songjin kingdom after the birthday. Okay. Jingwan didn't hide it. In the last 2 days before the birthday, there were no more troubles. Although some people were more active in the capital of the Qi Yuan kingdom, they still felt that it was not enough for them to visit this and that. Of course, there were also people who just wanted to walk around the capital of the Qi Yuan kingdom. They wanted to see all kinds of things in the Qi Yuan kingdom, especially those poor and small countries. They were probably thinking about whether they could open border trade with the Qi Yuan kingdom to promote the relationship between the two countries and develop together. The emperor's birthday was also a festive day for the country. Not to mention the people outside the capital. In the capital, as the time approached, the people began to decorate the capital with lanterns and banners. It looked bright and lively, and most people had smiles on their faces. Apart from these, the most lively and talkative thing was probably the various congratulatory gifts that the officials outside the capital sent to Lu Qingdi. Each of them was more precious and rare than the last. No one knew how much manpower and resources were spent on these gifts, and no one knew if it was because of some of the gifts that people died. However, the people couldn't see what exactly the gifts were. They just wanted to watch the fun and praise each other. As long as they praised each other, they would definitely not go wrong. On the night before the birthday, it was snowing heavily. By the morning of the birthday, the entire capital was covered in snow. Early in the morning, there were people clearing the snow everywhere. After all, it was the birthday, and there would be a lot of people entering the palace. They couldn't be delayed because of the snow on the road, and they couldn't let anything bad happen. Otherwise, if the higher-ups blamed them, they might lose their heads if they weren't careful. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan were basically ready to set off at any time. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/7102970. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 399. Based on Wan's words, next year will definitely be a bumper harvest. Li Hongyuan walked to Jingwan's side. He was also wearing a cloak over his imperial robe, but the difference was that there was a circle of black fur around the edge of the cloak. The collar was as wide as a palm, and the black satin surface was lined with scarlet. It made him look even more noble and handsome, making people unable to take their eyes off him. Jingwan raised her head slightly to look at him with a slight smile. Yuan's words make it sound like even the heavens have to give me face. Of course they have to give you face. Li Hongyuan raised his hand and gently stroked Jingwan's face. Unsurprisingly, it was a little cold, but her complexion was still the same. Perhaps because Li Hongyuan had been practicing martial arts for many years, his body was strong. At this moment, even without a hand warmer, his hand was very warm. Jingwan subconsciously rubbed against it. Speaking of which, Jingwan did not have a cold physique, but but it was still not as good as Li Hongyuan, a human-shaped big heater. Hugging her at night was simply too comfortable. Li Hongyuan reached out and gently covered Jingwan's head with the hood of the cloak, then straightened both sides of her head. Jingwan's hair today was in a cross-shaped bun, with 2 buns on each side hanging down to her shoulders. Only the top of her head was a hair ornament that was larger than a palm. The main body was gold, and the shape was somewhat like layers of blooming chrysanthemums. The top layer was densely decorated with rice-sized pearls, and the tip of each petal was either naturally curved or leisurely stretched. Some of the tips even had a few thin tassels hanging down. Below the tassels were sparkling gemstones, which looked exceptionally beautiful. Obviously, when making the cloak, they had already taken into consideration the fact that it would be combed into a high bun, so naturally, there would not be a situation where it would be too tight and messed up the hair ornament. Jingwan noticed that Li Hongyuan did not withdraw his hand for a long time and was puzzled. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" "No, I just think that Wan Wan is very beautiful. There is no one more beautiful than Wan Wan in the world." Li Hongyuan's voice was very soft, but his words were very sincere. Jingwan's cheeks heated up. She smiled and said, "Why not? Isn't it right in front of me?" Her husband's female disguise would definitely beat up all the women, and his normal disguise would beat up all the men. When God created someone, he must have been extremely biased. Li Hongyuan gently scratched Jingwan's nose. "No matter who they are, no matter what they wear, in my eyes, they can't compare to you, Wan Wan." Well, this was a typical case of beauty being in the eye of the beholder. In my eyes, in my heart, Yuan is also the most handsome. It wasn't just that beauty was in the eye of the beholder. In the eyes of too many people, he was the most handsome. Li Hongyuan smiled and kissed her. This time, the kiss fell on her forehead. "Let's go. It's time to go to the palace." Jingwan nodded. Li Hongyuan held her hand and walked out of the main courtyard unhurriedly. The couple walked forward hand in hand and whispered along the way. Behind them, Nanny Gong and Eunuch Mu were holding the birthday gift for Lu Qingdi. Nanny Gong looked as usual, but Eunuch Mu's expression was a little strange. What? Could this thing really be taken out? The other courtiers were the same as the officials outside the capital. They had sent their gifts to the palace early and registered them. However, the princes and their envoys were different. They had to present their gifts in public. The others had all kinds of rare treasures. Only their master had taken out this thing. Wasn't it a little too much? Eunuch Mu shook his head and got rid of the mess in his mind. The gift was prepared by the princess, and the prince had seen it in person. He didn't say anything, which meant that there was nothing wrong with the gift. It looked so inconspicuous, so there must be a special meaning. Sure enough, he was too stupid to understand it at all. The prince, in full ceremonial clothes, marched into the palace in a mighty manner. As the emperor's son, when entering the palace, he naturally didn't have to wait in line like the courtiers and their families. In such a weather, the longer he stayed outside, the colder he would be. Jingwan was actually a little worried about Madame Luo's health. But her grandfather was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel. As his family, the order of entering the palace was also according to the status of Luo Peishan. If she wanted to know, she didn't have to wait too long. So she was a little relieved. Speaking of which, the whole process of the birthday celebration would take a long time. According to the status and gender, it was definitely a huge project to go one by one. Of course, it was not easy to see Lu Qingdi's face just because they could celebrate his birthday. So, one could imagine how big the queue was. Moreover, since he was the emperor, he naturally had to keep a distance. Ordinary people couldn't get close to him easily. According to the rules, Li Hongyuan took Jingwan to the Jade Palace first to visit Imperial Concubine Su. At this moment, Imperial Concubine Su's place was also quite lively. In the entire imperial harem, Imperial Concubine Su had the most children. She had 3 children, and now that they were all married, it was only natural that her family would become even more flourishing and flourishing. It should be known that other concubines were lucky enough to have 2 children. In fact, in Lu Qingdi's harem, there were only a few who had 2 children. Imperial concubine Su was the only one who had survived until now and had a son. Imperial concubine Su didn't even have 2 biological sons. Imperial concubine Su could still raise Li Hongyuan when she had a son. In Lu Chengdi's eyes, she had a good relationship with the imperial noble consort. More importantly, Imperial concubine Su was the only one who knew the truth. No one was more suitable than her to raise Li Hongyuan. Other people had 2 concubines who raised 2 princesses. They were still young. Imperial concubine Su was very confident in this point. Therefore, she was in a good mood when she saw the younger generation gathered in the hall. Especially when she saw Li Hongyuan, her smile became more obvious. But when she saw Jingwan beside him, her smile unconsciously faded a little. Li Hongyuan was now estranged from Imperial concubine Su. Sometimes, he didn't bother to act seriously anymore. Compared with the outside, the hall was quite warm. Li Hongyuan took off his cloak and gave it to Qing Zhu. He turned a blind eye to the palace maid who came forward and took the job from Jingwan. He put down her hood, took off his cloak, and handed it to Bai Xiao, who stepped forward. His movements were natural and smooth, as if he was used to it. In some people's eyes, this scene was dazzling. It should be known that under normal circumstances, it was normal for Li Hongyuan and Jingwan to switch roles. The most annoying thing was that Jingwan took it for granted. Perhaps because the atmosphere was too harmonious, people couldn't stand it or felt jealous. Oh, 6th brother is so good to 6th sister-in-law. No wonder Princess Yining of the former Wei liked 6th brother at first sight. Princess Yining has a unique insight. I think 6th brother will also have a tender and protective heart for the fairer sex, Princess Min Xiang said coquettishly. Of course Prince is good. It's just that he doesn't have a good insight. Jingwan smiled faintly. She didn't care at all that Princess Min Xiang said to annoy her. Probably in everyone's eyes, the former Princess Yining of the Wei Kingdom would become Li Hongyuan's concubine. After all, no one would refuse such a thing. But who would it belong to? They would probably find out tomorrow. Li Hongyuan swept a glance at Princess Min Xiang. Min Xiang is married and your mouth has become mean. Without Mu Fei's constant teaching, you've released your true nature. Or is there a problem with your husband's family and you've been influenced by them? These words didn't have a single curse word, but it made Princess Min Xiang's expression turn ugly. Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't see it. There's one thing that outsiders should know. Whether this woman can enter Jin Qin Wang Fu or not, it's up to me, Li Hongyuan. If any woman likes Ben Wang, she can enter Jin Qin Wang Fu. What does she think Ben Wang is? Li Hongyuan's words were like a knife that directly stabbed into Prince Rui's heart. Only Li Hongyuan could say these words as if it was a matter of course. They didn't even dare to touch it. They were directly appointed by Laozi to be the concubine of a rival power. They didn't dare to utter a word and had to obediently bring her into the Fu. If they didn't like her, they couldn't directly kill her. Although everyone knew that they had been abandoned, but if they were killed, the family behind them, the people that their family was loyal to, would definitely make a big fuss about it. They couldn't wait to bite a few pieces of meat off his body. It would be best if they could bite him to death. According to Li Hongyuan's words, what were they? What were they? Imperial consort Su's heart was stifled and flustered. This kind of situation was something that she absolutely didn't want to see. She felt that this son of hers was getting further and further away from her. Although she knew the reason, she felt that it wasn't the real reason. However, the truth was right in front of her eyes. She couldn't find the source of that baseless feeling. After that, Jingwan was innocently implicated. Alright, in essence, Jingwan wasn't innocent. Li Hongyuan's change in attitude was indeed due to Jingwan's factor. Imperial consort Su reprimanded Princess Min Xiang. In reality, Imperial consort Su didn't feel that her daughter had said anything wrong. She was just doing it for her son to see. Princess Min Xiang felt wronged, but now that her mother's expression was very ugly, she didn't dare to say anything. In her heart, she naturally bore a grudge against Jingwan. That's right, the source of evil was clearly Li Hongyuan. Towards Li Hongyuan, she didn't even dare to bear a grudge. Jingwan just watched silently and resolutely didn't say a word about this kind of family drama. She just felt that her husband was really too powerful. As the father, he was rushing to be abused. As the mother, she had to act according to his mood. It was really enough. After that, the atmosphere wasn't very good. However, Li Hongyuan and Jingwan weren't affected at all. It was as if they were here to take a rest. In such a depressing atmosphere, Imperial Consort Su pulled Li Hongyuan to talk. Even if Li Hongyuan still gave her face, the atmosphere couldn't be eased. It seemed that there was really no way to return to the original state. Imperial Consort Su was very depressed. Her good mood at the beginning was completely destroyed. She simply invited her maternal family, the in-laws of her 3 children, or the womenfolk of her husband's family to the Jade Essence Palace. Even if she wasn't in the mood to talk to them, she could just let her daughter-in-law and son-in-law deal with it. It was better than this suffocating feeling. Jingwan was naturally happy to be able to see her grandmother. She threw everything else aside. Who was Madame Luo? Naturally, she could feel that the atmosphere here wasn't right. However, after secretly looking at the expressions of her granddaughter and grandson-in-law, she was relieved and didn't care about anything else. From this point of view, Madame Luo was actually a relaxed person. No matter how cold it was outside, many people in this hall still felt warm physically and mentally. Unknowingly, it was time for everyone to go and celebrate Emperor Lu Qingdi's birthday. First, it was the courtiers, then the madams, then the concubines, then Emperor Lu Qingdi's daughter-in-law and grandchildren, followed by the princes, and finally the envoys of other countries. The relatives of the imperial family were divided into the first 2 rows. There were a lot of people, but in fact, only a few people could enter the hall to celebrate the birthday. This kind of thing had been arranged. Whoever it was would go, and the palace servants would naturally guide them, so there was no need to worry at all. Jingwan saw Madame Luo off and couldn't do anything else. She could only tell the palace servants to be careful, and the palace servants didn't dare to neglect. In fact, the whole process took longer than Jingwan expected. When noble consort Su left, Jingwan was sure that it was almost their turn. Speaking of which, Emperor Lu Qingdi only had a few daughters-in-law. 1 wave was enough. 6th sister-in-law, let's go. It's our turn. Princess Rue said with a chuckle. Jingwan nodded. Speaking of which, they were just going through the motions. They knelt down, bowed, and said a few auspicious words. The focus was not as important as the imperial grandchildren. As for the concubines in front of them, in fact, they were just If Emperor Lu Qingdi was still young, perhaps he could hold a banquet before and after the banquet to let the concubines show off to their heart's content. Unfortunately, the imperial grandchildren were still young. Most of the things sent to them were prepared by their mother, so there was nothing to see. https://www.yangguiwaiwo.com/11/11807/7210814. HTML. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.yangguiwaiwo.com. Biku Pavilion Mobile Version Reading Website yangguiwaiwo.com. Chapter 400. Unlike the others, the envoys from various countries had been in the hall since the beginning. Letting them watch the whole process was a way to show off their power. Jingwan and the others had also taken their seats after the birthday greetings. Qianchen Hall was a special place for the imperial court. Its layout was different from other places. There was enough space on the east and west sides. Of course, even so, only a portion of the people could sit inside. Even if there were more places, those who were not of high status would not have a place to stand. There were pillars and carved beams. At this moment, the seats were arranged neatly. There were 10 rectangular tables, 3 on the east and 2 on the south. The tables were low. After sitting down, it was almost the same as kneeling. This was a big challenge to etiquette. The purpose of setting up such seats was to see some countries make a fool of themselves. The princes had to present their birthday gifts one by one, so everyone took their seats first. Qi Yuan did not have a crown prince. Prince Kong was the head of the legal family. It was understandable that the princes would start with her. Speaking of which, Prince Kong had been keeping a low profile recently because of the Empress's poor health. He basically did not cause any rash and reckless things. He worked seriously and tried not to stand out. The people in the entire faction rarely caused trouble for the other factions. It was enough to show how important the Empress was to the entire faction. The Empress was not energetic. This time, the birthday gift was prepared by Prince Kong himself. Of course, it was said that he prepared it himself. In fact, it was the result of brainstorming. However, the birthday gift was given to the Empress in advance. Although she did not see the real thing, the Empress praised Prince Kong after hearing the description. It was rare for her. Although there was a big gap between the mother and son, and Prince Kong even knew that he was just a chess piece in his mother's hand, they did not completely fall out. After all, they needed each other. At this moment, there was no room for internal strife. It was important to unite against the outside world. In this way, Prince Kong could not help but feel happy that he could get his mother's approval. A box that was half the height of a person was carefully carried in. After it was opened, a blue and white porcelain vase that was about the same height as the box was taken out from the soft stuffing. The vase did not look obvious, but if one looked closely, they would find that it was definitely not simple. Its body was thick and heavy, and the inside of the vase was full of glaze. The characters on the white background were different, but they were all the same word, longevity. The size of the characters followed the shape of the object. It was neat and natural, graceful and elegant. Some of the characters were round, some were square, some were triangular, and some were drawn in the shape of a peach. Some were in the shape of a small hill, which meant that one's life was as long as the southern mountain. Some were in the shape of a winding and complicated line, which meant that one's lifespan was endless. Imperial Father, this is the 10,000 longevity inscription Venerable. There are 2 longevity inscriptions on the top of the Venerable mouth, 77 words per week. There are 48 words per week on the side of the mouth and the outer edge of the circle feet. There are 75 vertical lines on the Venerable body, and 130 horizontal lines, totaling 10,000 words. Long live His Majesty! Prince Kong bowed deeply as he spoke. As the Emperor, receiving such a gift at his birthday banquet, there was no doubt that he was in a very good mood. He smiled brightly and said a few words. He then looked at the expressions of the other envoys. Some were stunned, some were surprised, and some were jealous. His mood couldn't help but become even better. One must know that to make such a large piece of porcelain, one must have superb porcelain burning skills. Such a bright blue and white hair color must be painted with the best blue and white color. Moreover, to make such a complicated and colorful longevity character, one must have a profound knowledge of writing. Such an extraordinary overall plan showed his son's respect for him. No matter how one looked at it, it was very honorable. Qi Yuan's various silks and porcelain had always been the favorite of other countries. The only country that could match the craftsmanship of Qi Yuan was probably the former Wei. However, looking at the unpleasant expressions of the people from the former Wei, one could almost conclude that the craftsmanship of this piece of porcelain was perhaps not even the former Wei could produce. My son is very thoughtful. Quickly rise. Reward. Prince Kong stood up. Thank you, Imperial Father. The joy in his heart could hardly be concealed. During this period of time, he had been suppressed. When he saw some people jumping around in front of him, he could finally hold his head high. His gaze seemed to sweep across his brothers, with a hint of provocation in it. In fact, there were not many princes who looked normal, including their mother, who was also anxious and secretly resentful. He probably didn't expect Li Hongyi to give out such a meaningful treasure. In the past few years, Li Hongyi had always given out things that were stable. They weren't outstanding, but they wouldn't go wrong either. Why was he emptying his mind this year? Many people thought about it and realized the crux of the matter. In the Zhongnan incident, Prince Kong had suffered the heaviest loss. Later, the Empress was seriously ill. Their faction seemed to have lost its backbone. Under such circumstances, they naturally had to think of a way to restore the emperor's heart. It was no wonder that such an ingenious object existed. Next was the third prince, Prince Rue, Li Hongming. In contrast, he was very calm. It seemed that he didn't care about the longevity tattoo venerable, but also seemed to be very confident in his own thing. In this way, it was inevitable that some people would be embarrassed again. Li Hongyi took his seat, and Li Hongming stood up. Their eyes met in the air. One smiled calmly, and the other smiled proudly. In the blink of an eye, they fought back and forth a few times. Li Hongming saluted and clapped his hands. His birthday gift was also carried in. It was like a cage covered with red silk. Everyone was surprised. Looking at it, it should be a living thing. Li Hongming didn't keep people guessing. He directly lifted the red silk. Seeing the dongbar inside, many people gasped. It was a white turtle as big as a millstone. Turtles had always been a symbol of longevity. Such a white turtle was even more rare and was called an auspicious sign. It was no wonder that Prince Rue was so calm. Since the longevity tattoo venerable could produce one, there must be a second one. But this auspicious sign was different. It might not be seen in 1,000 years. I wish father a long life, Li Hongming said calmly. His bearing was more and more calm. This thing was better than Li Hongyi's. His words and actions were also better. Many ministers couldn't help but nod, secretly praising him. Good. Lu Chengdi's smile became more and more obvious. Reward. Although his words were few, his expression already explained everything. At this time, Li Hongyi's face also turned green. He clenched his fists and cursed Li Hongming in his heart. But he was also glad that he was first. The only one who felt strange was probably Jingwan. Sick turtle. The Gong Prince wasn't so lucky. Recently, because of Qin Shu Fei holding the Phoenix Seal, he was very active. Now, with two people in front of him, his things were insignificant. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/7210815 HTML chapter error. Click here to report, registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Bicken. Com Bicken. Com. Chapter 401. Prince Rue had already taken his seat. The Gong Prince waited for a while before getting up and standing in the middle of the field. However, the courtiers were still constantly congratulating Lu Qingdi, not giving him any face. What emperor's good fortune, Qi Yuan's prosperity, especially the people in Prince Rue's faction, it was simply a deluge of heavenly flowers, as if because of this white tortoise, Qi Yuan could stand for thousands of years without falling. Because he already knew that his birthday gift was inferior to the previous two, he didn't want to take it out, but his own will and being forced by others were two different things. That's right, in the Gong Prince's view, he was deliberately targeted. Each and every one of them wanted him to make a fool of himself. He was standing in the middle of the field, but these people were endlessly praising the previous person's gift. What difference was there between him and that clown? However, the Gong Prince thought of the current situation and held back, because he knew that at this time, showing an expression that he shouldn't be showing would be courting death. After all, Lu Chengdi was in a good mood. If he showed an expression, it would be absolutely disappointing. Therefore, he maintained a smile, maintained his poise, and wanted to see if these people could keep talking. To say that no one was a fool, if they went too far, Lu Chengdi wouldn't think that he was biased, it wouldn't benefit Prince Rue in the slightest, and it would make the other countries' envoys laugh at them. Therefore, some people gradually stopped before going too far. The Gong Prince glanced at them. If you have the guts, then keep talking, ah? The Gong Prince pretended to brush his robes, and then greeted Lu Qingdi. This time, I've been beaten by my 2 elder brothers, Imperial Father. Please don't dislike this subject's son. Lu Qingdi was in a good mood, with the Gong Prince's words as a foreshadowing. The following things, even if they were inferior, it wouldn't make Lu Qingdi unhappy. The 100-life embroidered screen was brought up. Although it was inferior to the previous 2, it was done with great care, and compared to the 10,000-life rune Venerable, the font was more clear at a glance, so naturally there were more people who could appreciate it, and those who liked embroidery wouldn't necessarily feel that it was inferior to the 10,000-life rune Venerable. For example, Jingwan was more inclined to this embroidered screen. Li Hongyuan reached out to hold Jingwan's hand, and moved closer. Wan, don't worry. Jingwan was slightly surprised. She tilted her head to look at him and lowered her voice. Why does Wang Yi say this? Li Hongyuan also understood that he had probably misunderstood. Just now, I saw that your expression was strange. I thought that you were worried after seeing their birthday gift. Jingwan chuckled. It's not because of that. It's because of that turtle. She gently glanced to the side, seeing that everyone's attention was on the 100-life embroidered screen. She continued, white turtles are actually a kind of whitening phenomenon of ordinary turtles. Their whole body is white, only their eyes are bright red, and their neck is transparent, very much like a carved work of art. They are more afraid of light, and may have other diseases. It's hard to say what this turtle is like. Maybe it's just that it's white, nothing else is affected. Because it's white, it's easy for natural enemies to find it and attack it, so it's more difficult for it to survive than normal individuals. Therefore, the number of white turtles should be more than what people know. This kind of turtle should be more difficult to raise than ordinary turtles. In the process of raising it, it's hard to say whether its color will change, and if there's too much light, then something like a sick turtle wasn't that serious. After all, this kind of whitening phenomenon wasn't rare in the animal world, such as white snakes, white rabbits, white mice, white monkeys, white foxes, white lions, white tigers, and so on. However, it was never said whether they were sick or not. Their genes were usually stable, and they didn't have any diseases. Because of their appearance, it was true that it was harder to survive without the protective color. Li Hongyuan understood Jingwan's meaning, and his heart felt a little strange. White turtles had always been known as the incarnation of the gods. Once they appeared, it was said to be an auspicious sign. He originally thought that Li Hongming had gotten lucky this time, but now it seemed that this luck wasn't so good. Regardless of whether the turtle itself had any diseases, even if it didn't, raising it was a big problem. It was too easy to make a fuss about it. What did a white turtle mean? Everyone knew that if something went wrong, it would definitely implicate more than 1 or 2 people. When the situation is unstable, it's actually not wise to send a living thing. However, in my opinion, it's not wise to send a living thing at any time. If someone really wants to frame you, not to mention killing it, just making it look sick is enough to make people eat their heads off. Since it's a living thing, especially if it's offered as a birthday gift, it will inevitably be linked to the person who gave it away. Moreover, a white turtle is a living thing that is linked to the fate of the country. It's a good omen, but the accompanying risk is also considerable. Li Hongyuan nodded. So, Wan's choice is very good. Your Highness, are you deliberately mocking me? Jingwan raised her eyebrows. She didn't put any thought into the choice at all. It was completely to save trouble. It was a joke from a TV series in her previous life. This husband is just telling the truth. No effort, no money, it can be done casually, how could it not be good? Although the birthday gifts that he had presented in the past, he had only casually picked one from the rewards. Where it came from, it would go back to where it came from. Perhaps it would end up in his hands in the end. In terms of carelessness, who could compare to him? But even so, every year at the birthday celebration, if others didn't have it, he would have it. At this time, the Gong Prince had already returned to his seat. Speaking of which, The 100 longevity embroidered screen was also a first-class thing, but he wasn't too lucky. However, he still received a reward from Lu Chengdi. As long as he received 3 in a row, he would basically get a share of the rest. What's more, there was an envoy from another country, so it was time to show off. It was also precisely because of the presence of the envoys from other countries that the birthday gifts, which were originally carefully prepared, were put in more effort. When they learned that the envoys from other countries would come to participate in the birthday celebration, they changed the birthday gifts. Therefore, no matter what, it would not be bad. What would be different would probably be the rewards that would be given later. Therefore, the sickly 5th Wangye, who didn't appear in the past few years, also did well this time, receiving a few words of praise from Lu Chengdi. Because of the 5th Wangye's body, he had long given up on the idea of seizing the throne. Because his body simply couldn't bear to think too much. If he wanted to prolong his life as much as possible, he must relax his body and mind. Even when he was still studying in the palace, his schoolwork was much less than the other brothers. The teachers who taught them didn't have any requirements for him. Therefore, no matter what Lu Chengdi's attitude towards him was, he was unfazed. Next was the living king of hell who was in the limelight. It couldn't be helped, the existence of Jin Wangye was really too special. The envoys who arrived in the capital 2 days before Qi Yuan still didn't have the time to understand Li Hongyuan, but those who came early were different. They had enough time to patiently and carefully understand. Speaking of which, this matter wasn't considered difficult because it was basically a well-known matter. However, the more they understood, the more they felt that it was inconceivable and contradictory, and the more special it was. He was obviously the one with the least power, but it was hard to not pay attention to him. After Li Hongyuan came out from his seat, many people marveled at his appearance. Of course, there were also those who looked down on him, such as the Xiongnu. For example, there were many tribes in the north who paid attention to that kind of exposed strength and toughness. People like Li Hongyuan, in their eyes, were just like the Qi Yuan people who didn't have a single redeeming feature. Li Hongyuan stood in the middle of the main hall. His face was still expressionless, and he just turned his head to let people bring up the birthday gift. There was no mystery, no concealment, just unusually straightforwardly put the thing next to him. When everyone saw the thing clearly, they couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. What was this situation? Speaking of which, didn't Jin Wangye say that he was the richest among all the yellow seeds? Even if there was no longevity tattoo venerable, there should be a rare treasure like the white tortoise, right? It was rare for Lu Chengdi to be a little annoyed with this son of his. He loved this son so much, but at this time, he actually slapped his face? But thinking about it, it also didn't seem right. Long live Fu Huang, a bucket of Jiangshan, unify the country. Li Hongyuan unhurriedly said these 8 words. As soon as these words came out, everyone suddenly realized. Although it was just a bucket full of ginger, when piled up, it was like a mountain, unifying the country. For an emperor, was there any higher expectation than this? Even if it was just an emperor without any ambition, he would absolutely not refuse such praise. Although for other countries, this was probably very provocative. If it was only the people of Qi Yuan, there was no problem at all. However, who was Li Hongyuan? The arrogance and condescension of the King of Hell had reached the peak of perfection. Good. Lu Chengdi laughed loudly. How could this son lose face for him? Although this year's birthday gift was the most worthless, in fact, it was the most valuable and also the most attentive. Whether it was from the heart of an emperor or from the heart of a father, Lu Chengdi was quite happy at this moment. In this way, the cheapest birthday gift, in an instant, was comparable to that white tortoise. It could even be said that it was better. Emperors sat on vast lands and innumerable wealth. No matter what kind of rare treasures were, they were nothing in their eyes. They were far inferior to things with a good meaning. Fu Huang, there is another gift. It was made by my wife. Originally, I should have given it to you in private, but in my opinion, it is more appropriate to give it to you now. Oh, what is it? Show it to me. Li Hongyuan asked someone to bring in the gift. It was a long brocade box. Jingwan was also surprised. She didn't expect that this gift would be taken out in front of her face. Lu Qingdi's servant came down from the side of the throne, took the gift, opened the brocade box, took it out, and was about to open it. Fu Huang, it's better for you to open this painting yourself. As for whether you want to let others see it or not, it's better for you to decide after you see it. Li Hongyuan's words naturally aroused people's curiosity, not only Lu Qingdi. Lu Qingdi still did as Li Hongyuan said. He took the painting, waved the servant away, and unfolded it. When it was only a third of the painting, he suddenly stood up from the throne. The expression on his face suddenly changed. The smile disappeared completely. After a blank expression, his eyes became particularly sentimental. There seemed to be a faint trace of tears in his eyes. His hands couldn't stop trembling. He seemed to be particularly careful, as if he was afraid that he would accidentally damage the painting. He was so attracted by the painting that he even forgot the current situation. Fu Huang. Li Hongyuan's voice rose by 3 notches. Lu Qingdi was suddenly awakened. Then he realized that he had forgotten himself. He looked at Li Hongyuan, slowly sat back, and gently rolled up the painting. You said that it was painted by your wife? Lu Qingdi's voice was a little hoarse. Yes. From the painting to the final framing, it was done by Her Highness. Except for me, Her Highness, and Fu Huang, no one else saw it. Well, it was actually Li Hongyuan who framed it. Lu Qingdi's eyes fell on Jingwan. My 6th daughter-in-law is very thoughtful. This painting is very sincere. I have never received such a suitable birthday gift. It should be rewarded. Just tell me what you want. This was a big promise. Jingwan hurriedly got up. I'm not worthy of Imperial Father's praise. This daughter-in-law originally did not want any reward. I just wanted to express my filial piety. Speaking of which, it was a coincidence. It should have been the same as the other birthday gifts, but I didn't expect Prince to present it so seriously. Lu Qingdi naturally thought that this coincidence was the trip to the Pei residence in Jiangnan. My 6th daughter-in-law is right. This painting is worth it. If she can't appear here, who can? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/7307151. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 402. Naturally, many people were curious about a painting that was praised so highly by Lu Qingdi. However, there were still some people who guessed the content of the painting. Therefore, they all had different expressions on their faces, and their thoughts were more suitable to be enumerated. After all, Lu Qingdi's last sentence was enough to elicit a lot of things. Who, if he simply talked about the painting, should have used words like what or thing. Therefore, it was very likely to be something in the painting. It was very likely to be a person. And there was only one person who could make Lu Qingdi lose his composure like this. After Li Hongyuan, it was the 7th Lord's turn. It must be said that among them, every one of them had done their best to prepare the birthday gift. But now, Emperor Lu Qingdi's whole attention was attracted by the painting. He looked at it from time to time, touched it, and wanted to open it again several times. But after all, he had scruples about the occasion. If not, he would have just left in a huff, found a place to look at it quietly, and reminisced about it in silence. Therefore, after the 7th king, no matter what it was, Lu Qingdi's attention was not on it. It was good enough to get a nasal sound from him. The most embarrassing moment was when his son knelt down for a long time, but he did not respond at all. At this time, Jingwan felt a little embarrassed. It was as if it was not a painting that was sent to him, but a super demon who could bring disaster to the country and the people, who could steal Lu Chengdi's soul in a second. On the other hand, Li Hongyuan did not feel guilty at all for pranking his younger brothers. He was calm and looked more leisurely than anyone else. He drank by himself and occasionally peeled a nut and threw it into his mouth. Because his absent-mindedness was too obvious, people naturally became more curious about what kind of painting could make Lu Chengdi lose his composure like this. If they knew, they might be able to make use of it. Of course, this was the idea of the envoys of other countries. In fact, it was useless to know. How could they make use of a dead person? Find a substitute? Don't be kidding. For a person like the imperial noble consort, even if she disguised herself, she would be seen through in a second. Moreover, not everyone was suitable for a substitute. If the substitute was too perfect, it would not be on the same level as the fake. Such a fake, not to mention pleasing people, was more likely to cause anger for profaning the sacred beauty in people's hearts. The so-called substitute would be cut into pieces. The imperial noble consort was probably such an existence to Lu Chengdi. What was more, the one who looked the most like the one he loved was his son. However, because of the difference in temperament, unless Li Hongyuan showed a special expression, Lu Chengdi would never stare at his son in a daze. What value could the other fake have? It seemed that it was absolutely impossible to get the details from Lu Chengdi. These people naturally glanced at Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan. After all, no fourth person had seen the painting. Well, actually, Li Hongyuan showed the painting to Nanny Gong to ensure that it would be effective in front of Lu Chengdi. However, Li Hongyuan was really calm and completely ignored the people around him. As for Jing Wan, she couldn't be as good as Li Hongyuan. With a little pretense, her expression was also perfect. Therefore, no matter what these people thought, it would all end in failure. Didn't Lu Chengdi have a portrait of the imperial noble consort when she was alive? Why was he so fascinated by a painting now? Of course, there must be. However, freehand brushwork paid more attention to the charm and was more or less lacking in the form. Moreover, as a court painter, there was a limit to his ability. After all, the real famous painters in Qi Yuan were all from famous families. The worst of them were from a scholarly family. They had their own pride and loftiness. They really disdained to be a court painter who only served the royal family. For someone like the imperial noble consort, if they were not good enough, they couldn't draw such ethereal beauty and temperament. After several times, especially when there was a living person to compare with, Lu Chengdi became impatient. 2 or 3 of the portraits left by Lu Chengdi were self-portraits of the imperial noble consort when she was alive. Out of modesty, Lu Chengdi didn't know his own ability when he painted. Even so, Lu Chengdi couldn't put down these paintings for a long time. Of course, Lu Chengdi had more than these 2 or 3 paintings. After the imperial noble consort died, Lu Chengdi crazily asked the court painters to draw a portrait of the imperial noble consort according to his memory. However, Lu Chengdi was not satisfied with the portrait painted by the imperial noble consort. Moreover, they couldn't draw a painting that satisfied Lu Chengdi with only their memory. If Lu Chengdi didn't need them to continue to draw, they would have been torn apart. Under Lu Chengdi's pressure, the paintings became more and more similar, but there was no charm. In the end, Lu Chengdi had to give up. Now, he suddenly obtained such a painting that had both the form and the spirit. It was just like a real person. Naturally, it made his memory of the past clearer. Moreover, the person in the painting was too beautiful. Especially that smile, it was as if it was going to melt half of the person. Although Lu Chengdi had spent the past 20 years in his memory, there was still a big gap between the things in his memory and seeing it with his own eyes. At this moment, Lu Chengdi only felt that she was really smiling at him. In fact, there wasn't much beauty between the imperial noble consort and Lu Chengdi. The imperial noble consort wasn't the kind of person who blamed the heavens and others for the changes. No matter what happened, she would adjust herself as much as possible and then face it with a good attitude. However, she didn't have any feelings for Lu Chengdi. Naturally, she wouldn't take the initiative to do anything. Lu Chengdi watched her too closely. In the first 3 years, she wasn't by his side. After she was by his side, it was obvious that Lu Chengdi couldn't spend all his thoughts on her in the depths of the palace. As the saying goes, the tree wants to be quiet, but the wind won't stop. When Min Yuhan appeared in the capital, Lu Chengdi was already hot-headed. When he thought that he was devoted to her, this person was still thinking about someone else. Naturally, he exploded. If this was the case, how could there be any beauty between them? The expression of the person in Jingwan's painting was like a dream to Lu Chengdi. It wasn't that the imperial noble consort didn't have a pure and happy smile when she was in the palace. However, the object of this smile wasn't necessarily Lu Chengdi. It wasn't even a person. It was just a flower or a bird. The things that couldn't be obtained or lost would become the sand in the heart of the white moonlight. All the bad things would be selectively thrown to the back of the mind. The only beauty would be infinitely magnified to the point that it would be hypnotic to think that everything was beautiful in the past. From this, one could imagine how deep the influence of this painting on Lu Chengdi was. Knowing that they were in a tragedy, the princes behind moved quickly. They didn't hesitate at all. They greeted, gave gifts, said auspicious words, and then scrambled back. It didn't matter if they were princes who had grown up and were conferred the title of king or princes who were still in the palace. To avoid the tragic situation of not being able to get up after kneeling, they wouldn't kneel if they were clean. Therefore, the gifts presented by the princes became the most typical example of a strong start and a weak finish. Next, it was the turn of the envoys from the various countries. The empress didn't have enough energy and was already a little tired. At this time, she had no choice but to tactfully remind Lu Chengdi. Princes, after all, were his sons. As their father, if he made them lose face, then so be it. However, the envoys of these countries were different. Even if it was a small country, he had to give them face. Qi Yuan was a country of etiquette. The Celestial Empire was a great country. As the emperor, there was no reason for him to do such a disrespectful thing. Lu Chengdi wasn't at that level. Although he didn't intend to put down the painting in his hand, he still looked at the envoys from the other countries from the beginning to the end. He was expressionless and didn't show any disrespect. Speaking of which, the gifts prepared by the envoys weren't very special. The big countries didn't need to curry favor with Qi Yuan and didn't want to bother at all. The small countries couldn't bring out anything that was enough to shock the people of Qi Yuan. Most of the gifts were local specialties of their own countries. Anyway, they were precious enough and wouldn't embarrass them. Some of the smaller countries even brought out things like gold, silver, and jewelry. The special gifts were a pair of little white tigers and a piece of white tiger skin. They came from two small countries respectively. It was quite a coincidence. Jingwan was extremely attracted by the cuteness of the two little white tigers. Well, Jingwan was actually a cute lover. Li Hongyuan didn't know what being polite meant. If his wife liked it, he directly asked for it. He didn't have any reservations at all. Naturally, Lu Chengdi waved his hand and allowed it. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/7393987. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile edition website bicken.com. Chapter 403. At this time, Jingwan realized a problem. During the welcoming banquet for the former Wei and Chong kingdoms, those singers and dancers were still dressed as lightly as they were in summer. She reckoned that they were not any better now. However, one should not forget that it was still snowing outside. Although it was not as heavy as last night's, one could imagine how cold the weather was. She felt that even wearing one less layer of clothing was unbearable. As for them, because there were so many women present, they definitely did not wear more than 3 layers of clothing. Most of them were still a layer of thin fabric or a layer of light muslin. There was no need to think about cotton-padded clothes. If they wore such thick clothes, how could they dance well? How could they show off their enchanting figures? However, she could only think about it. She could not reach into the palace. At this time, an envoy from a small country to the west of Qi Yuan stood up and expressed to Lu Chengdi that they had brought a few women from their country. They were good at singing and dancing. They wanted Lu Chengdi to appreciate the charm of their foreign women. It was obvious at a glance what his motive was. Everyone was clear about it. However, not many people were angry. At most, the young concubines in the imperial harem were angry. The others were purely amused and wanted to see a joke. Countries like the former Wei, southern Qi, and western Xiongnu were even more disdainful. The people of western Xiongnu showed their disdain on their faces. There were also people from Songjin. Their envoy group this time was mainly made up of women. They were even more disgusted by the use of women to curry favor with big countries. However, it had nothing to do with them, so they could not say anything. Lu Chengdi, on the other hand, looked a little normal. In fact, he was still distracted. He did not even think about the intentions of the small country. He agreed without much thought. Then, the 5 women walked in. However, the moment they saw them, they more or less opened their eyes. They all muttered about how immoral they were. Jingwan's first reaction was to feel cold. Her palm-sized skirt was tied in front of her chest. There was a deep cleavage at the top. The cloth looked like it would burst at any moment. The muslin skirt below was below her navel, hanging on both sides of her hips. There were bells on her wrists and ankles. There was also a small waist drum at the side of her waist. There was a long veil at the back of her head that trailed to the ground. This outfit was more provocative and eye-catching than the most explicit performance Jingwan and the others had seen in Jiangnan. At the same time, orchestral music came from an unseen position belonging to the musicians. Compared to the tunes they were used to, this tune could be considered explosive. A few dancers stepped to the rhythm and beat the waist drum. Their movements were abnormally hot and seductive. Although they considered themselves cultured, they could not take their eyes off this time. People like the Xiongnu, who were not so calculative when it came to matters between men and women, did not hide the desire in their eyes. It was a scene of ugliness. When the envoy of the small country saw this scene, he felt proud. So what if they were big countries? They were all the same. However, when he looked up at Emperor Lu Chengdi, his pride dissipated a lot. It was obvious that he did not care about it at all. The Emperor of Qi Yuan had such strong self-control? So, all the coquettish glances were thrown to a blind man? It could only be said that some people were unlucky to be disturbed by the King of Hell. Jingwan was appreciating it in a more normal way. Well, if some of the more deliberate movements were removed, it was actually not bad. What do you think, Your Highness? Jingwan chuckled softly. The princess is more serious than me. Li Hongyuan's tone was a little cold. Jingwan's smile became more obvious. Although someone liked to get jealous easily, Jingwan felt that he was quite cute sometimes. So, in fact, she also had masochistic tendencies? Well, she should restrain herself. She should not annoy him, otherwise, she would be the one suffering. Li Hongyuan's expression was a little dangerous, but he did not say anything. Jingwan was puzzled, but Emperor Lu Chengdi's eunuch came to her side. Your Highness, the Emperor wants to talk to you. Since Emperor Lu Chengdi wanted to see her, Jingwan quickly got up and went over. She stood 3 steps away from the throne, but Emperor Lu Chengdi felt that it was not enough. He waved his hand and Jingwan was only 1 step away from him. 6th daughter-in-law, did you see Wanwan's portrait in the Pei family? Jingwan hesitated for a moment. Father, in fact, no. Just by hearing some things, he wanted to do something. Many people said that His Highness looked like the imperial noble consort, so this daughter-in-law boldly asked His Highness to wear women's clothing. Originally, he was very unwilling, but because he wanted to give it to imperial father, and His Highness also wanted to see what the imperial noble consort looked like, this daughter-in-law compared it to His Highness. In the process of painting, this daughter-in-law weakened some parts and turned it into this painting. Jingwan said, slightly embarrassed. Emperor Lu Chengdi could not believe it and was even a little stunned. Really? He looked at Li Hongyuan a little differently. This was a different kind of colorful clothes to entertain the relatives. Yes, there are some things that His Highness just doesn't say. She should earn some favor for her husband. Emperor Lu Chengdi sighed. I know that although Yuan is a little scoundrel, he is actually a good child. Jingwan smiled. Father, how much does His Highness look like the imperial noble consort? In the painting, that is her. You painted very well. I like it very much. It's good that father likes it. Speaking of which, His Majesty the Emperor of the Qi Yuan, the envoy of the West Han tribe, suddenly stood up. He was a standard burly man, wearing a leather jacket and a leather hat. In the eyes of the people of the former Wei of the Qi Yuan, he was a real barbarian. Of course, in their eyes, the people of the Qi Yuan had thin arms and legs and were good-looking but useless. This was just the evaluation of these people who lived like princes. They admired the Qi Yuan soldiers who guarded the border cities. Of course, this kind of feeling was hidden in their hearts. On the surface, there was only contempt and deep resentment. After all, the Qi Yuan occupied fertile land, rich assets, and countless women. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/7460732. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 404. Although he was unhappy, Lu Chengdi did not show any emotion on his face. However, his expressionless face made him look more dignified. Jingwan sighed in her heart. After all, he had been the emperor for 20 to 30 years. No matter how bad he was, he still had a lot of things that he should have. Among his sons, although there were quite a few who were strong, they could only use their sharp claws and teeth in front of him, including Li Hongyuan. Before they were prepared, they would not easily make a move. Father, your daughter-in-law will return to her seat first, said Jingwan. No rush. He tilted his head. Bring a small stool over. After giving his orders, he looked at Jingwan with a warm smile. Sit next to me. I have something to ask you. Since he had spoken, Jingwan could only sit down obediently. This seat was very eye-catching. However, it was only a small stool, similar to an embroidered stool. Sitting next to Lu Chengdi's feet was the same as a junior sitting next to an elder. It did not matter. Instead, it gave her weight. If she could gain Lu Chengdi's favor, no matter how unreasonable she was, even imperial concubine Su would have to think twice before doing anything to her. Perhaps this was the reason why her husband had presented the portrait on the spot. The foreign beauty's dance had already ended. The beauty was enchanting, her dance style fiery. However, apart from making some unrelated people's blood boil a bit, the main character's heart didn't even stir up a single ripple, only suffering a bit of coldness for nothing. TSK, she really was quite pitiful. It seemed that the imperial concubine was without a doubt Lu Chengdi's true love. Only then did Lu Chengdi look at the envoy of the West Xiongnu. He did not say anything, but his meaning was clear. Speaking of which, other than the former Wei, the Qi Yuan's mortal enemy, the Western Xiongnu and Southern Qi were also real enemies. Their borders had never been truly peaceful. Southern Qi was a bit better, but the Western Xiongnu were lacking in resources and drank the blood of Mao Ru. They were all martial people and were naturally warlike. No matter how one looked at it, it was impossible for them to remain indifferent in the face of a fat piece of meat like the Qi Yuan. The West Xiongnu and North Xiongnu were originally from the same family. However, the two brothers had a falling out, and not only did they split up, but they also became mortal enemies. It was so serious that they had to pacify their internal affairs before resisting foreign aggression. Comparatively speaking, the North Xiongnu was weaker. It was only 30 years ago that they proposed to marry the princess of Qi Yuan as a way to establish diplomatic relations. With the marriage of Princess Heong, they originally wanted to borrow the power of Qi Yuan to get rid of the West Xiongnu. However, in the end, Princess Heong killed the king of the North Xiongnu. The North Xiongnu was crippled by Qi Yuan, and it would be difficult for them to recover for decades. However, Jingwan believed that the West Xiongnu must have contributed to this as well. It was just that Qi Yuan would not record this down in history. There were many reasons why Qi Yuan did not directly invade and take over the North Xiongnu's territory. Apart from the huge difference in cultural heritage between the two countries, it was too difficult to subdue the North Xiongnu. Another reason was the terrain. If the North Xiongnu were to be included in Qi Yuan's territory, it would be a little like a gourd. The North Xiongnu would be at the smaller end of the gourd. Although there were not many places that bordered Qi Yuan, they were surrounded. Furthermore, the West Xiongnu would definitely take care of things. After weighing the pros and cons, they took some benefits from the North Xiongnu and retreated. However, it was really strange that the North Xiongnu did not get swallowed by the West Xiongnu and become the powerful Xiongnu again. Your Majesty, the Emperor of Qi Yuan, we Xiongnu worship martial arts and are not interested in these girly things. Why don't we let our warriors fight to liven things up for everyone? It will also be a blessing for your Majesty. What do you think? Regardless of whether it was the North Xiongnu or the West Xiongnu, they all considered themselves as Xiongnu, just like how the former Wei considered themselves as Great Wei. However, they really came up with the idea of using martial arts as a blessing. However, if the Xiongnu appeared in other countries and did not flaunt their martial arts, they would not be called Xiongnu. Approved. Lu Chengdi was too lazy to care about this kind of thing. As expected, a burly West Han man who was accompanying them stood out and tore open the leather jacket on his upper body. With a tug on both sides, he pulled out his hands and tied the jacket around his waist, revealing bulging muscles that looked like tree bumps. He looked rather powerful. Previously, when the woman revealed her arms and waist, these noble ladies of Qiyuan still had to avoid looking at her, not to mention now, who knew how many people's faces turned green. Jingwan slightly shifted her gaze, and also could not help but frown. Although the cultural background was completely different, it was not to the extent that she did not understand it completely. Seeing their reaction, the West Xiongnu people did not restrain themselves. Instead, they slapped the table and laughed loudly. The man in the middle deliberately shook his muscles. I've long heard of the valiant men of Qi Yuan. Our Xiongnu women all look forward to it. I hope you won't be stingy with your guidance. Although he said so, his provocative and contemptuous look was simply too obvious. Many people of Qi Yuan were filled with righteous indignation. They almost slammed the table and stood up. However, they still had to maintain their gentlemanly demeanor. Of course, not everyone could maintain their gentlemanly demeanor. Furthermore, there were some people who could not be provoked. Li Hongyuan casually threw the wine glass in his hand. It fell to the ground with a clatter and shattered into pieces. At this moment, it was particularly eye-catching. However, Li Hongyuan's expression was still indifferent. His demeanor was better than anyone else's. It was as if the person who did this was not him at all. He Zhihai, properly teach our noble guests what is called, when in Rome do as the Romans do. Today, your fists should not be like cotton. Otherwise, when the time comes, Ben Wang will turn you into cotton. When the West Xiongnu people brought it up, He Zhihai was eager to give it a try. However, he was suppressed by his mother and grandmother. He could only be restless. Thinking about it, in this situation, without the orders from above, they naturally could not act blindly without thinking. Now that he heard Li Hongyuan's words, he inexplicably trembled. Then he deeply understood Jin Qinhuang's meaning, that, the former fifth prince of Wei was beaten by him until he could not get up. Jin Qinhuang also said that his fists were like cotton. In other words, he only needed to leave him with one breath. Or, sparring, sometimes it was inevitable that he would not be able to stop. Lu Qingdi did not speak. It was clear that he tacitly agreed with Li Hongyuan's meaning. To be honest, Li Hongyuan was usually infuriating, but at this time, it made people feel particularly relieved. After all, the other party had already provoked him. Of course, it was more satisfying to slap them back on the spot. He Zhihai rubbed his fists. However, he was only 16 years old. Even if he was taller than his peers and stronger than his peers, that face still looked like it had not completely shed its childishness. Such an appearance would naturally be looked down upon by others. The West Xiongnu people's ridicule was a very normal thing. He Zhihai did not get angry. Instead, he grinned and said, "That's right. Xiao Ye's hair is not even fully grown yet. So, sometimes, it is inevitable that I do not know my limits. If something happens, please be magnanimous." Xiao Yi had already said the ugly part first. Digression, https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/7561438. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, no registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 405. Mother, why do I feel that this bastard has grown a brain after following Jin Qinhuang for a period of time? Old madam, he muttered. Old madam, he didn't say anything. If all her guesses were correct, then Jin Qinhuang was definitely not ordinary. If he really wanted to teach that stupid grandson of hers who only knows how to fight, then obviously he wouldn't just teach him how to use his brain to fight. Old madam, he started to look forward to her stupid grandson's future. Clearly, the other party was infuriated by He Zhihai's mischievous attitude. Originally, he already felt that a little kid was a great insult to him. Now that he spoke so arrogantly, if he didn't teach him a lesson, wouldn't others look down on the Xiongnu people? We Xiongnu people have been practicing martial arts since we were young. At the age of 10, we are all warriors. I don't know about your Qiyuan people, but don't you think I will treat you like how I treat the Xiongnu warriors and not show mercy? That's exactly what I was looking for. If you were merciful, then it would seem that this young master is bullying you. The fight was on the verge of breaking out. Both of them had used their full strength, so how could they show mercy? Both of them didn't have this thought. That Xiongnu person was still as fierce as before, but He Zhihai's change was more obvious. He restrained his smile and showed fearlessness, valiance, and even madness. It was as if he was facing the strongest opponent. He didn't treat his own people the same way. Subconsciously, he would restrain himself. Now, this was an enemy, and the kind that didn't care if he was beaten to death. In just 3 moves, that Xiongnu man felt an absolute pressure. His heart shivered. Qiyuan had actually produced such a monster. If he didn't deal with it carefully, perhaps he would fail miserably. Just as he was thinking, He Zhihai's left fist suddenly landed on his body. From the right to the left, the back of the fist smashed onto his left cheek. His face was deformed, and his body was deflected due to He Zhihai's strength. Not only that, He Zhihai's fist seemed to have landed on his heart at the same time. That Xiongnu person stabilized his body with great difficulty and didn't fall to the ground. However, he only got back a little bit of his face. The corner of his mouth overflowed with blood and the teeth in his mouth were knocked out. However, he didn't dare to spit them out. Thus, he put on a show of swallowing the blood and teeth. Not only that, but his chest as well. Although his heart wasn't injured, there was definitely something wrong with his ribs. Even breathing was painful. He Spiritual Sea did not continue to attack, but his posture seemed relaxed. He was in a state of battle readiness, ready to attack or defend. He grinned. "You're still distracted when you're fighting with this young master?" He whistled lightly. "You really have guts." Without another word, he lunged forward again. Without any misgivings, the bigger and fiercer the more he fought, the fiercer he became. Moreover, he was only facing one enemy now, not a group. It was also not someone like Jin Qinhuang who had a way to suppress him. Naturally, he didn't need to use his brain to fight. However, Jin Qinhuang's recent training for him was very harsh, but he still preferred this kind of most direct fighting style. When little gangster he went all out, there weren't many people who could stop him. No matter how tenacious you were, you still fell down in the end. Furthermore, you weren't able to stand up immediately and staggered a few times. He Spiritual C's feet slightly rolled, shaking his fist. "Kneel down and admit defeat, then this young master will let you go. How about it?" Under normal circumstances, after fighting to this extent, one should know that they were absolutely not an opponent. Admitting defeat was nothing. But after he Spiritual C said this, the nature was completely different. Even if they didn't want to fight, they had to continue. He Spiritual C was goading them. It could also be considered an open conspiracy. If they didn't want to be humiliated, then they would stand. The result of continuing to fight was naturally blood splattering everywhere. Every time they were beaten down, the words "kneel down and admit defeat" would jump out from his Spiritual C's mouth. And the other party persisted. Every time they got up, they would fall down again at an even faster speed. His Spiritual C would also shake his head and click his tongue from time to time. "It's just admitting defeat. Why bother? For someone like you who stubbornly refuses to admit defeat, that's not called having a backbone, but purely having a problem with your brain." His Spiritual C scratched his head. "This young master fought for half a day. It shouldn't be that I'm really fighting with someone with a problem, right?" The living king of hell had always been infuriating. Little gangster, he was not to be outdone. Internally, he would definitely make people fume with anger. But to outsiders, especially those West Hun people, each and every one of them gnashed their teeth and looked as if they couldn't wait to eat someone. TSK, this psychological side was simply too satisfying. However, this kind of cruel and bloody scene, there were still some people who didn't dare to look. In the end, that West Hun person couldn't get up anymore. He struggled on the ground. If his Spiritual C continued to attack, this person would most likely lose his life. The manager of the West Hun people stood up with a whoosh. But before he could open his mouth, his Spiritual C kicked the person on the ground out, landing right next to the West Hun people's seats. His Spiritual C clenched his fists. "How boring. Although this young master likes to bully people, I won't go so far as to bully someone who can't fight back." However, this warm-up isn't enough. Who's next? Hurry up, come up. Did the West Hun people still dare to go up? The manager glanced at the person beside him. That person shook his head slightly. Clearly, after the battle just now, he was very clear that he was no match for this Qi Yuan brat. If he went up, he might end up in the same situation. He was a well-known figure in the West Hun people. If he fell here, looking at the half-dead person on the ground, even if he could survive, he would definitely be crippled. What would happen to a crippled person when he returned to the West Hun people? Just thinking about it made him shudder. Therefore, he definitely couldn't go up. The manager's face darkened as he forced a stiff smile at Lu Qingdi. "Your Majesty, Qi Yuan is full of talents. This person must be the #1 warrior of Qi Yuan." "Really?" He Spiritual C sneered. "Don't put this young master on a pedestal. #1 warrior? This young master is just an insignificant pawn. I have nothing to do all day. I'm just an idle playboy. In Qi Yuan, there are a sea of people who are more powerful than this young master. Didn't you hear our prince say that this young master's fists are made of cotton? In short, do you still want to fight or not?" Speaking of which, he Spiritual C shouldn't have casually responded. However, Lu Chengdi wouldn't care about this kind of slap to the face of the enemy country. The West Han people looked at his spiritual see sinisterly. However, this kind of gaze had no effect on his spiritual see at all. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/7609760. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 406. Li Hongyuan glanced at it and moved his line of sight away. Your mouth is more nimble than your fists. He Zhihai shuddered again. Just a moment ago, he was immensely proud of himself and even prepared to go to Jin Qin Wang to show off his merits. In the end, if he had known earlier, he would have ended the battle quickly and directly crippled the person. Why would he have so much nonsense to say? Thinking of the possible encounter that would follow, the overlord instantly turned into a tortoise. Jingwan looked at He Zhihai's appearance and raised her hand to cover her mouth to hide her smile. During this period of time, she had come into contact with He Zhihai. He Zhihai initially gave people the impression that he was an absolute little overlord, but in reality, this person's nature was not bad. Other than being extremely obsessed with martial arts, he was a bit too straightforward, and was also a qualified fanboy. Towards Li Hongyuan, his attitude was, "Male God oppresses me 1,000 times. I treat male God as my first love." No matter how miserably he was beaten up by Li Hongyuan, he would be revived on the spot in seconds. His own people had cleaned up the person who provoked him, but he couldn't be too smug. Lu Chengdi had people invite the imperial physician. Let's not talk about other things, whether this person was dead or alive, the skill of face still had to be done. Is there anyone else who wants to exchange pointers, no matter which country? He paused. Don't overdo it. Needless to say, there really were people who continued to go on stage and then directly chose their opponent. This kind of situation generally happened between two countries that had enmity with each other. Probably because He Zhihai was too fierce, the other countries didn't find fault with Qi Yuan. In addition, Lu Chengdi had arranged for people to watch. In case a certain two people got angry, it would be easy to pull apart. In this kind of situation, after all, it wasn't the first time that Li Hongyuan and He Zhihai fought. Moreover, they didn't use weapons, so it was more than enough to pull apart. Without Qi Yuan's matter, Lu Chengdi unrolled a few scrolls of painting and turned to speak to Jingwan. Zhan has never seen this painting technique before. Where did Lao Lu learn it? It wasn't strange that Lu Chengdi didn't know about the fine brushwork technique. Unless it was a member of the imperial family who was proficient in painting, otherwise, who would run to him for no reason to say this? Jingwan chuckled. To tell imperial father the truth, this painting style was created by my elder brother. It was only last year that the style gradually matured. It would be a lie if Lu Chengdi said that he was not surprised. Then he sighed. Minister Luo is an outstanding and upright person. The Luo family is also a first-class family. It seems that the descendants of the Luo family are all excellent. You are all good children. Jingwan smiled but didn't say anything. It wasn't easy to answer, but Lu Chengdi didn't want Jingwan to say anything. Later, Lu Chengdi asked about their trip to Zhongnan to the main house of the Pei family. No wonder he brought it up after such a long time. The main reason was that he was asking for trouble by asking his son about it. As for Yu Zhongqing, he explained it in detail. However, he was a man and not the person involved. There must be a difference between the two. If they were to talk about this matter, they had already prepared a confession long ago. Jingwan was very clear about what could be said and what could not be said. There would not be any mistakes. After all, she was a woman. Jingwan spoke in more detail. Moreover, her speaking skills were incomparable to Yu Zhongqing's. She also talked a lot about the imperial noble consort before her marriage. Although she learned most of it from clan head Pei, it was all good things. Lu Chengdi naturally liked to hear it. In the past, the imperial noble consort was a taboo in front of Lu Chengdi. However, ever since Li Hongyuan beautified their relationship, Lu Chengdi seemed to have forgotten some of the things he did in the past. He couldn't wait to let the world know how good his relationship with the imperial noble consort was. Jingwan also used Li Hongyuan's name to inquire about the imperial noble consort from Lu Chengdi after she entered the palace. The two of them could be said to be happy and harmonious. At this moment, Lu Chengdi smiled again. Moreover, it was a very amiable smile. Ignoring the dragon robe, he looked like an old man who had lived the rest of his life comfortably. Moreover, he was the kind that his children and grandchildren liked to revolve around. Jingwan saw this and really didn't know how to describe her heart. The fight below was very lively. Jingwan and Lu Chengdi had become their own world. Unsurprisingly, there were far more people watching them than watching the martial arts competition. Many people were envious of Jingwan. Among them, no one had ever been so close to Lu Chengdi. Even Lu Chengdi's favorite princess didn't have such an honor. Everyone knew how much benefits a person could get from Lu Chengdi's favor. Therefore, they must be jealous and cursed in all kinds of ways. However, no matter what, they didn't dare to show it on the surface. Moreover, from today on, Jingwan would definitely be the second favorite in Lu Chengdi's heart. It was even possible for her to become the first favorite. Firstly, she was a woman and also a daughter-in-law. Naturally, she wouldn't talk back to Lu Chengdi like Li Hongyuan and could talk to him nicely. Secondly, she was the only one who could draw the portrait of the imperial noble consort in Lu Chengdi's heart. With the first one, there could be a second one, and a third one. It was as if she had grasped Lu Chengdi's lifeline. Li Hongyuan had to stand aside. Therefore, it was just a matter of time before Jingwan could do whatever she wanted in the capital city. In the same hall, two worlds went their separate ways just like that. Before the banquet, Lu Chengdi stayed for an hour. Naturally, he couldn't wait to leave. At this moment, he urgently needed to be alone with his imperial noble consort. Jingwan returned to Li Hongyuan's side. The two didn't say anything. They just exchanged a tacit glance. After an hour, some personal problems were solved. They returned to Thousand Years Hall. Because they had made arrangements early, there naturally wouldn't be any problems at this time. Rows of palace maids, who looked like spring onions, brought in all kinds of exquisite dishes. However, in the middle of winter, these things only looked good. It was cold and chilly. How many people would take the initiative to reach out their chopsticks? At least half of the dishes on the table had to be removed the same way they were served. However, the dishes on the table today were different. There were 4 main dishes that were placed on a special small stove. There was smokeless charcoal in the stove. It was burning below. Steam rose from the top and the fragrance assailed the nose. Those who originally didn't have an appetite felt a little hungry now. Many people felt that the imperial kitchen had produced a smart person this year. Why didn't they think of this earlier? In the past few years, they were all cold. They were basically always hungry and cold. Lu Chengdi came late. His mental state was a little contradictory. He seemed a little dejected, but also a little excited. The banquet began. Everyone drank together. This meal wasn't bad. It was just that the drinking competition was a little fierce. Lu Chengdi didn't refuse anyone. In the end, he naturally drank until he was high. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/7727906. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.